Alrighty, happy Wednesday to you and yours. It's noontime here in our time zone, but it could be at 1 in the afternoon. It could be in the morning, depending on what side of the country you're on.
Or the
I'm
world.
here with my new friend. I can't wait to talk to this guy because I'm going to tell him this before I even introduce him. I remember seeing as I was growing up and buying all my magazines, you would always see this cool looking dude in these magazines, and I'm like, well, when am I going to hear his music? When's he coming out? When's he coming to Philly? And then I would always say to myself, why isn't this guy playing with Punky Meadows? Because I always thought he looked like Punky Meadows. But here he is now, sitting next to me, 8 hours away from me, the one and only Mr. Rik Fox. Rik, how the hell are you doing?
I'm great. How are you? Thanks for having me on your show.
I'm doing great, man. Seriously. So, you have a super long history. It goes actually, I didn't even realize it goes a lot deeper and longer than I realized. Once I start investigating and researching, I didn't know about the whole uh, background going to your, New York days. I thought you were a West Coast guy. I didn't realize you were a New York guy.
That's how a lot of it started. Because back in the '80s there was no internet. That we were using. So
Right.
it's just word of mouth or whatever's in magazines. So when I came out from New York, I was just like somebody just appeared out of nowhere, with the New York accent like that, people are like, where'd this guy come from? So there was no way for me to expound upon, what I did back in New York, except verbally to people, just in conversation. And it's just too bad we didn't have a way of getting that. Either that, or if you had somebody who was like a publicity agent or press agent, and they would put something in a magazine, like that. But I didn't have any of those connections like that back then. So
Yeah, it's hard to believe, because we're all so spoiled by this internet thing that we have. Like, it's still hard to believe when you think back, like you said, print magazines and books. That's what we had to rely on. We didn't have none of this instant things. And in the magazines, they were like 3-4 months behind on what was going on.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like I don't really see that I've done that much, especially compared to my peers and contemporaries. I've done some hit stuff and then gaps in between, for whatever reasons, and it was either hit or miss or right place. It's like Forrest Gump and rock and roll, being in these key places, at certain times, but not, it's you're part of the background. You're not really part of what's going on in the forefront.
Right.
So some people have said comments people make on the internet, like either this guy is one of the unluckiest people ever, or he's, he just kept missing all these big breaks. It's a little of both, it's a little of this, a little of that. I found myself, in looking back, a lot of my career was actually replacing other bass players in other bands.
Right.
Like that, except for when I formed Sin. But with the Martian Rock Band in New York, I replaced their bass player. When I played in Virgin in New Jersey, I replaced their bass player. When I came to LA, I was replacing a bass player that was in Sister, that was no longer in Sister, which was Joey. I forgot his Italian last name. He was playing with Blackie. I replaced him. But anyway, that was through an audition. But even in after that in Steeler, I replaced Tim Morrison in Steeler. I just found myself replacing other bass players. So I must have had something that they were interested in that I brought to the table.
Right. Well, let's go back to the whole New York thing, because first, so you were from Brooklyn.
Yeah. Well,
okay.
I was born in Amityville.
Okay.
Amityville, Long Island.
Near the old infamous house.
Right. Well, not there, but we lived there for about a year, and then we moved to Massapequa, and then my parents broke up, and I wound up going with my dad to Brooklyn and in Greenpoint, and that's where I grew up.
Okay, so in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, I got to ask you this because do you possibly remember a bakery, the Quality Bakery on Graham Avenue?
I don't remember it, but I probably have been there many times. When you're always running errands for your parents
Yeah,
or your relatives, like my aunts across the street, stuff. You go here, go there. Here's the money. Go do the shopping for me. So I probably have been there. I just don't remember off the top of my head, but I've been to several bakeries that we had.
right.
They had Polish bakeries.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Because
we're always getting like a kushiki or something out of the Polish bakery.
because it was my father-in-law's and his brother's bakery.
Oh,
I said to my fiance, Greenpoint, Brooklyn, was that where you guys are from? She's like, oh my God, that's where my father's bakery was.
yeah. So and then on Nassau Avenue we had the Busy Bee, a delicatessen. That was a great source for Polish food. It was a
Wow,
predominantly a Polish neighborhood. So
that's fine. I'm writing that down. I'm going to ask them if they know that place. So all right. So back then you were actually dating Peter Chris's little sister, and you were like around that whole, um, you know, thing that was about to become this mega force of iconic rock and roll in the very early days before Ace was even involved.
yeah, that was around 1972. Peter's family had moved of all the places in the world they could have moved to. That chess piece brought itself to my backyard, almost literally.
Wow.
Greenpoint is famous for having a bar on almost every corner, like that. I used to call them taverns, and they had moved right around the corner from me on the corner of Monitor Street and Norman Avenue, and it was a bar there. And they lived in one of the apartments upstairs over the bar, and they didn't have a backyard. If you open up their kitchen window and you go out the window, there's like a roof. And that was a roof that was over like a multi-car garage that
Wow.
belonged to the next house over. So that was kind of their backyard area, was this roof, and they'd have their folding lawn chairs out there and whatnot. And then you can go up a ladder that went up to the next part of the roof, which is where Peter's father had pigeons.
Oh
A lot
wow.
of old Italian guys had pigeons on
Yeah.
the roof. And then they'd wave a stick and the pigeons would fly around, and then he'd come back. And then, that was his pet thing, was the pigeons. Like that, and so his family moved there. They didn't look like everybody else.
Sure.
They kind of stood out just from the way that they looked, and it wasn't bad. It's just when you live on a certain street in the neighborhood, everybody just kind of a generic look. I don't know, but when they would go shopping, they'd go up and down North Henry Street, right past my house.
Okay.
To the grocery store or whatever, and Mrs. Criscola was very nice. She was smiled at everybody, said hi, how you doing, hi, how you doing, like that. And the girls didn't look like the rest of the girls in the neighborhood. I mean, they were wearing like tight jeans, tight tops.
Right.
I don't like rock and roll looking, but it kind of looked like, I don't mean this in a bad way, but gypsies.
Yeah.
We called them
Gotcha.
gypsies.
Sure. Yeah.
They had dark hair,
Mhm.
they looked Italian, Romanian, kind of, like that look. So the girls would keep to themselves up on the corner. They'd play ball with themselves,
Okay.
the sisters. There's three sisters. There was Joanne, there was Donna, and there was Nancy. Nancy was the oldest one. She already had a baby from an absentee father. And so she had a bad attitude just right from the get-go. She hated guys because she got abandoned. And they had a little bit, her baby Kim. And then Peter, of course, was married at this time to Lydia, and they lived further down in South Brooklyn.
Okay.
More in the heavy Italian section than the other end of Brooklyn. And one thing led to another, and I kind of would watch them playing, and then once in a while they'd lose control of the ball and come bouncing down the street. I'd pick it up and bring it over, and eventually the ice broke, and we started talking like that. And Joanne kind of looked a little bit like Cher, when Cher was younger. I kind of had that Gypsies, Tramps, Thieves kind of look,
Yeah.
So I looked. Well, I didn't fit either in the neighborhood. I was trying to be rock and roll,
Sure.
I was trying to grow my hair. I was like a sophomore in high school at
Okay.
the time. But I was kind of ahead of the curve with rock and roll, like that. And 72 was a great year for rock and roll. I mean, from 70, 71, 72. And we had WNEW FM, which was one of the first progressive, FM rock stations that would play extended time cuts You
Wow.
know, and they would be, DJs would have time to go off and have a smoke, go to the bathroom, come back. You had Iron Butterfly, Inagata Davida. That was a 20-minute
Mm,
piece, or something like Traffic. Traffic had really long extended cuts, things like that.
right.
King Crimson songs were like 6, 7, 8 minutes long. So that's the kind of stuff we were listening to. And then in conversation with the Chris Gola sisters, they said, well, our big brother Peter, and there was another brother, Joey. Joey and I were artists. We would draw, we were
Okay.
graphic artists with our marking pens and whatnot, and our pads. And we would kind
Okay.
of compare notes and draw psychedelic stuff, things like that. Was big then. And then Joey was really heavy into the Rolling Stones, so he kind of got me more into the Rolling Stones than I
Okay.
was, like that. And they said that their older brother Peter was a rock star. And I said, "Oh, really?"
Hmm.
And they said, "Yeah, well, he was in a group called Chelsea,
Mm-hmm.
and they had one album out. They were kind of almost like Grateful Dead-ish,
Okay.
even though they had some semi psychedelic hard rock songs, what was we're trying to interpret as hard rock in that era on the albums. And I heard the album and I like it. It wasn't Led Zeppelin, but
Yeah.
it was. I had some stuff in it that appealed to me. And I eventually got to meet Peter. He would stop over at his mom's house, sometimes alone, sometimes with Lydia, like that. And when Chelsea broke up, and of course they lost the record deal. It's when Peter put that famous ad in Rolling Stone magazine and Village
Mm-hmm.
Voice. Drummer will do anything to make it, like that. And he played a lot of the clubs in Manhattan, Trudy Heller's, this club, that club. And he was trying to get out of the whole Williamsburg mindset.
Yeah.
They moved from Williamsburg, which was the next town over from Greenpoint, and it was a dangerous area, And
Mm.
that's him and Jerry Nolan from the New York Dolls.
Yeah.
They were from that area, so growing up, so you had to be tough. You had to be a street guy in order to survive,
Yeah.
and your wits and your fists was how you survived, and sarcasm,
Mm.
sarcasm is like a survival tool in New York. People outside of New York in other areas of the U.S. don't understand. It's a regional
Nah.
thing that
Yeah.
we're all wise guys,
Yeah.
and that got me into trouble later on when I was involved, with Randy Piper. But so and Peter at this point already had his hair layered, had that layered haircut.
Okay.
And I said, well, can you give me a rock and roll haircut? I want to get a rock and roll haircut. This was created by a stylist named Paul McGregor out of England.
Huh.
And if you look at the back of the Rod Stewart and the Faces album, Not As Good as
Yeah.
a Wink, and you see the puppets, the marionettes, and they have
Okay.
what they call the rooster haircut. So
Okay.
there's these layers cut, and your hair would stand up, but it
Yeah.
would be layered out like that. It would make the hair look thicker.
Right.
And Ronnie Wood and Rod Stewart had those haircuts, and it was starting to spread through the rest of the London and the United Kingdom rock scene. Bands
Mm.
were starting to get their haircuts layered. Sweet, Queen,
Mm-hmm.
like that. They were bringing that kind of hairstyle in, as opposed to from the 70s, where it was just parted in the middle and just one
Yeah.
way. And then McGregor came over to the United States, and he started doing the film industry, and Warren Beatty and I want to say Jane Fonda,
Okay.
and it started to spread through the Hollywood crowd, and they started getting their hair layered. So that's what we call the shag haircut. That's where the name the shag came from, aside from the English slang for doing it. So Peter says, get me a pair of scissors and a couple of Bud Tall Boys, Budweisers,
Sure.
16-ounce cans. We call them Tall
Yeah.
Boys.
Pounders.
And I got a pair of scissors from my grandmother, and I sat there on the roof outside, and he cut my hair in layers like
Wow.
that. And I went back to my house to bring the scissors back. My grandmother, of course, hated long hair on guys, and she says, "What is that stupid look? It's too long. Cut it shorter." And I went back around the corner to Chris Gola's house, and I said, "Well, she said it's too long. Cut it shorter." He goes, "What is she, nuts?" So yeah, but he did a really good job in layering it, and it kind of, people said it looked kind of like Bowie,
Nice.
it was layered like David Bowie's haircut. like that. And then as it started to go out, then you can appreciate the layers as they get longer. So
Right.
Peter was like a big brother that I never had. He gave me my first rock and roll haircuts.
Wow.
You know, and then when to bring it into Kiss, when he got the gig with Gene and Paul, they would rehearse at their loft on 23rd Street in Manhattan.
Right.
So you want to come watch? Well, yeah, okay. So sometimes he had Lydia's car, and we pile in a little Chevy Nova, and we'd go there, or we take the subway in.
Wow.
You know, and it was that I don't. People say the room was really small. To me, it was probably about maybe 12 feet by 30.
Okay.
Maybe something like that, you know, maybe 40 feet. But there was all these buildings in New York that had, you know, industrial lofts where they used to have businesses like that, and a heavy steel door that would roll across like that, and a big bolt lock that would go like, you know, like that or something like that. And so it was like 1 or 2, 3 floors up, and you know, we'd go sit there and watch them go through what becomes the Kiss songs.
Wow.
You know, Firehouse and Strutter and Nothing to Lose. They were early versions of these. And then, you know, so we'd go watch them every once in a while. And I remember Gene Simmons had an SVT bass cabinet and head, and it was stenciled on the side. It said Jack Bruce.
Huh.
So he actually had one of Jack Bruce's old SVT bass amps.
Wow.
You know, from Cream. And there was no band around that we could compare this sound to.
Right.
Never heard anything like this before. They managed to combine Beatlesque harmonies with really catchy songs, with heavy guitars and these walking melodic bass lines that Gene had.
Right.
So there was really nothing that we could compare it to. They were trying to become a conglomerate of like Humble Pie and Zeppelin and the Beatles, you know, like that. Because it was really hard to compare them to any, because there was nothing around like them. You know, they were creating their own bar to raise.
Right.
Like, it's the only way I can put it.
Were you playing bass at all at the time yet? Did you start?
I had a bass. I was very green. I wasn't, you know, I never took any lessons.
Okay.
So to backtrack a little, when my parents split, you know, my mother and father agreed to visitation rights.
Okay.
So she had lived in Long Beach, Long Island. She was like a block from the beach, a real short block from the beach. And my dad was working at Kennedy Airport at the time. He was a ticket agent for National Airlines. So we'd leave at like 4 or 5 in the morning, drive all from Brooklyn out to Queens to Kennedy Airport. And I'd wait around for hours until she was up and got in her car and drove in from Long Island and would meet me at the airport, pick me up and take me to her house for the weekend. And then on Sunday, she'd either drive me all the way back into Greenpoint or bring me to a drop-off point. My father would pick me up and bring me back to the house. So after my parents split up, you know, my mother wasn't ready to settle down. You know, I mean, my dad, this guy has done so many things. When he got out of the Navy, he used his GI Bill to go through broadcasting school. Okay.
Oh, wow.
He loved big band and swing music and Sinatra. That was everything to him, was that kind of music. Okay. So he wanted to be close to it in one way or another, and he wanted to be a DJ on the air, on the radio. So he's in CBS, Columbia Broadcasting School, and right before they were going to graduate, he says this guy came in from the door, knocked on the door. The teacher opened the door. This guy came in from I don't know where, and he says, "Who wants to start now?" And my dad goes like that. He goes, "All right, follow me." And he got my father onto the air on WGBB in Freeport, Long Island. My dad created his own jazz show. And he was playing big band and swing music, all the stuff he loved, you know, the cutting edge jazz and swing, and Tex Beneke and this artist and that artist, and he'd have the artists on the air with him like we're doing now while he's sitting next to him, and he would interview the artist. And then my dad was getting letters from the record label saying, "Thank you for having our artist on the show. You've helped promote, blah, blah, blah." So it was in the blood. It's from an early age. I didn't realize a lot of what was going on.
Sure.
he took me out there once or twice with him, and I remember that weird industrial greenish yellow color they used to paint walls like that, and it was his area with the turntables, and there was the window, and on the other side of the window was where the engineer would sit.
Okay.
Now here's a kicker. My dad's engineer for his radio show was George Savalas. I don't know if that name rings a bell to you.
No.
His brother Telly.
That's what I was gonna like.
Telly Savalas, the actor. Remember Kojak?
Of course. Who loves
Telly
you, baby?
Savalas. All right. George would engineer my show. He says sometimes Telly would come in and help him. So Telly Savalas was helping to co-engineer my dad's radio show.
Wow.
And Telly Savalas is Jennifer Aniston's godfather.
I didn't know that.
Talk about 6 degrees of separation.
Yeah, right.
She doesn't know that either. I haven't met her to tell her that, but like that. So this is what my dad told me, you know. And then after he got off the air, he'd take us down the street to the malt shop. We'd have chocolate egg creams, which a lot of people don't know what they are today.
Oh,
I mean, when we had
every time I went to New York when I still lived in Philly, but it's not there anymore. But I would go to the Gem Spa, you know, on the back of the New York Dolls album cover, just to get an egg cream, and amazing.
Right, yeah, and so those are my memories of that. So anyway, that cut ahead when my parents separated. The guy that my mother wound up going out with and then marrying, her second husband, was a guy named John Knox. John used to co-manage with his partner Dean. They co-managed. Hang on a sec, I got it right here.
Okay.
I should have had this right here. I didn't know I would go into this. Liquid Smoke. I don't know if you can. Okay.
Yeah.
There. And The Unspoken Word.
Wow.
Okay. They both co-managed these bands.
Huh.
Okay, so Unspoken Word was on Atco, which is a subsidiary of Atlantic.
Mm-hmm.
Liquid Smoke was on AFCO Embassy, which was kind of a label that did soundtracks for movies. But these were bands that played the clubs in the Long Island club scene. And John and Dean co-owned a couple of clubs. There was Dean's College Inn, further out in Suffolk County, but in Nassau County, in Long Beach, on the main drag, there was a club called Timothy Tubbs Loaf and Tankard, and these bands would play there all the time. I never got to meet them, but I was introduced to their music. You know, by this point, my mother had 3 more kids. I had two boys and a girl, so I had 2 stepbrothers and a stepsister, and they would sometimes go to the club in the afternoon, you know, hang out, whatever, and you know, whether they're cleaning up or whatever. And I heard stories where John would be at the bar at night, like all the Rangers hockey team used to come hang out there. Okay, and so the kids got into ice skating. They went to the summer hockey school that the Rangers used to have, where the Rangers went to Skateland summer hockey school, like that. So because they got hooked up with the Rangers, and then. John was flirting one night at the bar with some sweet young thing. My mother walks in, spins around the bar stool, and bam, knocks John on the floor in front of everybody. So I mean, I guess it was that kind of scene, you know. My mother flirted behind my father's back, and now she was getting karma back at her. So so anyway. By the age of 12, 13, around 1968, you know, they were starting to have rock and roll on television. Besides Ed Sullivan, there was Hullabaloo, there was Now Explosion, there was other up and coming TV. TV could see a potential in having rock music on, aside from Sonny and Cher and the Smothers Brothers, things like that. And I saw Steppenwolf.
Okay.
And I sat there. My introduction, little bits and bites of the rabbit hole. Okay.
Right.
And I saw Steppenwolf, and I said, I fell in love with the band at 13. What kind of a 13-year-old can conceive of what Steppenwolf was?
Right.
I mean, they were like an anti-establishment, semi-political hard rock band.
Right.
And I saw the bass player Nick St. Nicholas. He's wearing these black leather pants and this fringed buckskin coat, and I guess he had a little headband on, and he's playing a Rickenbacker, and I went, God, that is the epitome of cool.
Wow.
I want to be what that guy is, and I wanted. That's how I wanted to be a bass player. That was my first influence. So my cousin across the street got me my first 2 LP albums.
Okay.
Steppenwolf's first album and the Beatles' Rubber Soul.
Nice.
So that was my introduction to that kind of music. Before that, I was listening to whatever was on the radio. I mean, I had a little transistor radio like a lot of us had. Whatever was done, WMCA, WABC, and Cousin Brucey and Vic, whatever that was. And so beyond early Beatles and early Stones, that's what I was. And Gary Puckett and the Union Gap. I managed to get a couple of albums of Gary Puckett and the Union Gap. And he wasn't rock. He was like a crooner.
Yeah.
He was playing stuff for the Midwest bored housewife. He was singing love songs and whatnot. But there was something about the band that looked cool. They all wore Civil War uniforms. They looked like a gang. They looked like they belonged together. So I listened to that stuff, and then I started buying 45s. And Status Quo, pictures of Matchstick Men, Ted Nugent and Amboy Dukes, Journey to the Center of the Mind. Cream was coming out, so I had some of those things. But then I got these 2 albums, and I would sit down in the basement and listen to them for hours, back to back, over and over and over again. So I loved Rubber Soul. But something about that Steppenwolf album just appealed into my DNA.
Wow.
And John Kay's writing these political songs because, when he was a little kid, he and out of a crowd of 15 people, he and his mother, and it was down to like 7 people, made it through the Iron Curtain under gunfire.
Wow.
So that is heavily in his memory.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
sure.
a lot of stuff he was writing about how the world is and what he saw and like that. And they mixed it with blues and country and I want to say little bits of either African-American Chicago blues, early I want to say, like, if you've seen the movie Crossroads with Ralph Macchio.
Yeah.
That Ry Cooder kind of slide guitar-y stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That was that was also in Steppenwolf's music, a little Appalachian music. So it was this conglomeration that they put together, and then you turn up the volume to like 10. I would say, what do you get when you turn the blues up to 11? You get Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, there you go.
So that's kind of, what appealed to me. So, the next Steppenwolf album, I got that. The next Steppenwolf album, I got that. I couldn't get enough of them. And somehow I understood, my young mind could understand the messages in his songs.
Right.
Like that, and it was a reflection of the world going on around them, in the 60s on the Sunset Strip, they had the riots and the sheriffs, beating people up, and it was the anti-war protests and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was growing up in that era. I'd like to think that I was born in the perfect era to be introduced to music. Was, even though I was born in 55, being cognizant of the music from, say, 65 to 75 was an awesomely golden era of music for me. Okay, so then that spans so many different types of music, different genres.
Absolutely.
In the 60s, you had big bands in the background. There was strings and horns like that would orchestrate. And as they got to more pop, they still had the orchestration in there. And then you had your what they call the wrecking crew, who were the musicians, the studio musicians, Carol Kay on bass. These people would come in, and people didn't know that they were this professional group of musicians who played sessions for all the big bands. A lot of these bands didn't play their own music. They wrote them, but the session people would come in, like the Beach Boys, and they'd orchestrate all this stuff, and then it'd be horns and strings and things like that. And as we got closer to the 70s, they started cutting out the orchestrations, and it became harder electric guitars. And it was an amazing time of experimentation. You know, for
Absolutely.
guitars would now take over the melody lines that clarinets and saxophones would play. You know, because I can watch a guitar player today playing a guitar line, and I can go, well, I remember big band and swing. That could be like, you know,
Right.
Woody Herman or, you know, Glenn Miller playing it on the licorice stick. Burnett, you know, it's the same. Or I can watch movies with the big band stuff and seeing a guy playing a clarinet going, and I can see that transposed onto a guitar.
Right.
You know, and I've seen some old black and white films from the like 20s and 30s, 40s with big bands in them, and they would showcase the piano player, they'd showcase the trumpet player, he'd stand up and play, and then the clarinet player, he'd stand up and play, and then he'd go over to the guitar player, and there was one or two guys, I can't remember their names, they played like Eddie Van Halen on an acoustic guitar.
Wow.
And I've sat there, but people don't know this.
Right.
You know, most people don't know this.
Sure.
Only if you do a little digging, you'll find this stuff.
Right.
You know, which is why guitar players like Slash came along and did his homework.
Yeah.
When I first heard Slash, I went, that's like Joe Perry. He's playing 70s. This guy's done his homework.
Yeah.
He stepped away from everything that was going on in the 80s and got away from the Eddie Van Halen and the shredding.
Yep.
And took us back to, you know, bending guitar strings and a couple of double octave bends and things like that. I mean, this guy's, because Leslie West from Mountain was one of my favorite all-time guitar players.
Right.
I can hear a little bit of that. Joe Walsh, James Gang.
I
can hear that in Slash's guitar playing.
Yep.
You know, I mean, one of the Guns N' Roses songs, he practically lifted the guitar solo from Blondie's One Way or Another.
Oh.
And I can't remember the Guns N' Roses. And they play them on the radio all the time. And
now I have to go back and hear. I got to go listen to the Blondie one and see if I can pinpoint it.
Yeah, it's like that. And he's doing these bends, and I'm like, it's a Blondie song. But I mean, look at Ace Frehley in the Kiss song, She. His whole guitar solo, he ripped note for note from Robert Krieger from 5 to 1.
Really? I got to write this down. I got to go back and research this now.
And the guitar solo in 5 to 1, Ace copied note for note, and it's in the Kiss song, She. It's the same solo.
That's hysterical.
So I have an ear to catch these things. I'll hear somebody play solo or something on the radio, and I'll go, wait a minute, and it'll drive me nuts. Okay, that's from this song. So I have an ear for that, you know. So,
well, now what going back to that time, like, you know, you're a teenager and Kiss is starting to put everything together. Ace comes in. Are you still around the scene, like when they start hitting the clubs and start making this buzz?
Yeah.
So when that buzz is going on, are you able to get into the clubs at that time?
I somehow managed to make a fake ID.
It seems like everybody back then had a fake ID.
Yeah. And the thing is, in New York, it was the glitter and glam scene.
Yeah,
everybody was copying the glam, the British glam wave that was coming over. Like I said, Rod Stewart and the Faces, Slade, Sweet, you know, that kind of whatever it was, T-Rex, Bowie. It was filtering over from across the pond into New York.
Sure, yeah.
And we had the English newspapers, Melody Maker and New Music Express, so we could see pictures and read articles of what was going on in England. You know, and they had bell-bottom jeans, which they called loons, Loons. They called them loons.
Okay.
And like that, and I got to get a pair of those pants. You know, and they're tight here, and then bell bottoms like that. And so, if you dressed like that, you were considered a supporter of the scene. You know, we didn't have terms like poser back then. You know, if the band is wearing satins and sequins. And people, when the audience comes in wearing satins and sequins, it's like you were part of the crowd. You were recognized as part of the scene. The the support system. You know,
Gotcha.
the fans dressed like the bands.
Sure.
Okay, so I had we had on 59th Street by the 59th Street Bridge in Manhattan had Jumpin' Jack Flash, which was a major clothier store for rock stars. Sequin, satin, platform boots.
Wow.
Huge platform boots, like all different levels, all kinds of rock clothes. Even the black artists in the 70s were wearing even the satin suits, had stuff with sequins on it. They were getting clothes from these places.
Wow.
Down in the Village in Lower Manhattan, you had Granny's Takes a Trip. And so that was down the lower Manhattan in the Village area, and they had platform shoes and flashy rock star clothes. And I would find out where these places were. I would take a subway into Manhattan, and I'd do my window shopping and my research, and if I could scratch enough money together, try and get a pair of boots or a shirt or a pair of pants, or for my birthday, my parents want to take me shopping, and so I had a pair of burgundy satin pants.
Wow.
And a sequin, some kind of sequin shirt or something. So I was able to get into the clubs by looking like everybody else.
Gotcha.
And the fake ID, and the platforms make you taller.
Right.
And also my father had gotten me a really, really nice German 35 millimeter camera.
Okay.
So, you got hand ground lenses. You got the best lenses in the world. And I became a photographer. I was taking pictures of everything. So I'd get to the clubs and I'm here to shoot the band.
Love it.
Right this way,
Love it.
And I took pictures of bands that would. Okay, so in Queens, as Paul Stanley said, Queens had a club on Queens Boulevard, or right around Queens Boulevard. It was called the Popcorn Club or the Popcorn Club. They changed their name to Coventry.
Yeah. Okay.
And that was the Queens version, the first stepping point out of Manhattan of the club scene in New York. And they, as Paul says, they try to recreate like a Queens version of the Mercer Art Center.
Okay.
Where the Dolls would play and all the the Brats, the Planets, and Street Punk, Luger, all these bands that played with Kiss would come across into Queens. And by car, Coventry was about maybe 10 minutes from my house.
Okay.
On foot, over an hour.
Sure.
I like that because I've walked it. But
now, were you a fan of the Dolls back then? Like, did you get into their whole scene?
I liked them. They were kind of sloppy and sleazy, but that was part of their whole act, and glammy like that. But Kiss's music was more structured.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
In a format that was easier for me to digest. The Dolls was just like real. Who cares if I make a mistake? Like that. The Dolls were like transvestite punk.
Yeah.
The image of transvestite, but punk. It was more about the street angry attitude in the music. And I was at Coventry one night, and a couple of the Dolls were there. I'm sitting at the bar. Jerry Nolan sitting right next to me. I recognized him. Johansson was there. I think Arthur and maybe Sylvain. I don't remember if Johnny was there. And I remember Jerry was smoking a cigarette, and he flicked and the ash went on my satin pants, and I was like, "Hey, burn a hole in my pants." He goes, "Oh, sorry," like that. And I said, "You Jerry Nolan?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "I'm friends with Peter Criss," and him and Peter were like, they grew up together,
Sure.
And I said, I was going out with one of Peter's sisters. He goes, "Oh," and broke the ice immediately.
Nice.
I was validated at that point, and we talked, and I don't remember what we talked about. We talked like that. And so I remember they were watching whatever other band was playing there. But as I got to people, as the people at the club started remembering my face when I would go there, or they'd see me talking to important people, then next time I'd go, they'd see me go, "All right, come on in." I didn't have to show the ID as much, and they saw the camera. So they got to remember that I was this kid coming in there shooting the bands.
Do you still have those pictures?
I have almost all the negatives.
Wow.
I shot ISIS, which was an all-female band.
Huh.
They had a rock band with horns. They had a brass section.
Okay.
There was a band called Turn Down Broadway.
Okay.
I shot the Harlots of 42nd Street.
Wow.
The Brats.
Mm-hmm.
There was another band coming out of the Coin Management stable
Okay.
that Sean Delaney was working on called after he had Stars.
Mm-hmm.
He had a band called Spike, and it was a
I don't
three-piece.
know.
It was a three-piece band. They never really went anywhere. Uh,
Okay.
it was a three-piece band. They wore black Capezio spandex bodysuits, but instead of black leather, black studded leather like Kiss, they wore yellow studded leather. So they were
Oh,
wearing like leather wristbands with yellow leather wristbands with studs or harness straps. All the stuff you could get in the S&M shops, which was
wow.
where Sean when Sean got Kiss all their black leather gear because Sean was part of the gay crowd
Yeah.
in New York. So he knew all the people in the S&M and B&D
Mm-hmm.
genres who made leather for the stores that sold it.
Gotcha.
He
Gotcha.
commissioned those stores to make Kiss their first leather accessories. The waistbands and whatever they had that was all studded was
Mm-hmm.
done through Sean Delaney through these S&M B&D outlets.
Isn't it funny how that with Alcoin and Delaney and all, they took after Kiss exploded, then they tried to do just change the colors up, like he said with Spike, yellow, and then with Angel was with white. You know what I mean?
Well, they didn't work with Angel, and Angel stuff wasn't really studded. It was more satins, and
Yeah.
flowy stuff. But yeah, so I worked with Spike. Sean called me up and said, "I got this project I'm working on. Why don't you come down and check it out?" And it was a three-piece band: guitars,
Gotcha.
drums, and bass. And bass player was a black guy, Tyrone. Had big afro, right? And he had a big bleached streak all the way up around. I mean, this is not like your typical African American guy. This is like a rock and roll African American guy,
Right.
and he was gay too. And I had no idea because back then a lot of the gay people didn't act flamboyant. They were
Yeah.
not all Rip Taylor guys. They were
Right.
not
Right.
They pretty much kept it cool and on the down low.
Mm-hmm.
And like that. They did not stand out like the whole political crowd does now. And
Right.
your parades and pride. It wasn't like that in New York back then. The crowd, again, it was New York. The crowd was tougher.
Yeah.
So your gay bar scene in New York was more butch guys,
Mm-hmm.
big buff weightlifter kind of guys. You had your slender guys, your what do you call the tops and bottoms in the parlance of that kind of crowd. But I didn't know that Sean was gay. I
Okay.
didn't know that Bill O'Coin was gay. I didn't know that Tyrone from Spike was gay until he goes, "Oh yeah, I'm gay. No, it's no big deal." It's like, okay, no big deal. It's casual.
Right.
I said they didn't talk with lisps. They didn't talk. They were not effeminate.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
They were not overly masculine. But there was like this borderline area. You didn't know the players
Sure.
without the scorecards.
Yeah.
Until one day I was leaving Bill O'Coin's office. They were looking at some of my Kiss scrapbooks that I had put together.
Okay.
And I was walking out the door. Bill escorted me to the door of their office, and I got a squeeze on my butt. He grabbed a handful of my ass, and honk like that. And I nearly jumped out of my skin, And when I went back to Brooklyn, I went over to Chris Gola's house, and I said I was over at the management, Kiss's management, O'Coin. I said, Bill grabbed my ass. And Peter's mother goes, "Oh, watch out for Guy. He likes the boys." Whoa! So, again, my naivete was being shattered at all of these junctures, not
Right.
knowing that there were gay people involved in the entertainment industry. Like,
Sure.
I mean, outside of Paul Lynde, who you could kind of tell. Or the Rip Taylor, the really overly flamboyant people who you could just kind of tell. There was no gaydar. It was obvious.
Yeah, sure.
But a lot of people were just behind the scenes. The gay was like just quiet, like that. And so so I was being exposed to all of this stuff. Anyway, let me try to tie back into where we were at before all of this. So seeing the rock and roll on TV, Um, John took me to my first concert, John Knox,
Okay.
which was Richie Havens
Okay.
at some one of the Long Island arenas. I don't remember which one it was. I really wasn't into Richie Havens. I wasn't into
Mhm.
protest songs, and he's an acoustic player.
Okay.
Okay, I got his message. I got the idea, but I really wasn't into Richie Havens. So,
Right.
because I told John, our arrows are not hitting the right target. He goes, "Well, what do you like?" I said, "I like Steppenwolf. I like this. I like that. Hard rock stuff."
Right.
And he took me to. We had there was a series of music stores in New York called Sam Ash.
Yeah.
Okay, guitar stores, music stores.
Hmm.
And in Hempstead, Long Island, Sam Ash was like their main headquarters, their big store.
Okay.
And we walk in, and the guy goes, "Can I help you?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "We want to get him his first bass."
Wow.
And I look up on the shelf, and I pointed to the Rickenbackers. I went, "I want one of those."
Of
That's what they
course.
keep those places. Now, back in 68, 69, I don't know what they were charging for Rickenbacker basses back then, but it was still too much for what his pocket could afford.
Sure.
He goes, "You got anything else laying around? Maybe something down the basement he can start out with?" So the salesman comes back with I think it was a Kent bass.
Okay.
It was like some cherry sunburst, black edges, and it had black vinyl wound strings. So some basses they come with a black vinyl wound around them. It mutes the sound, and over time it started to unravel, and then there was the steel strings under it, like
Okay.
that. But I never took lessons, so I didn't know an A from a G from an E.
Sure.
I didn't know what I was doing, and we could never afford to send me to take guitar lessons.
Hmm.
Back then, it was the expenditure that was out of our budget. So I would listen to my records down the basement, and my dad went to Radio Shack. He got me like a little amp, like that
Okay.
little speaker, transistor kind of an amp, and
Sure.
I plugged that in, and I'm listening to the records, and I didn't even know how to tune the damn thing. And I'm trying to copy what I'm hearing on the record, and it's just hit and miss, hit and miss, hit and miss. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, like that. And I was like that pretty much until I probably, I want to say 74, 75.
Okay.
I graduated high school in 74. I was rocked out by this point because Kiss is now signed.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd seen him at the Diplomat.
Uh-huh.
I saw him at Coventry. I missed the Daisy shows. I shot him at the Coventry. I shot them at the Fillmore East, the press presentation for Casablanca. I shot them there. Those pictures have been stolen and pirated around the world for decades because I didn't have my name on the pictures. And then I saw them at the Sunshine Inn in Asbury Park. I got some pictures of him there. I was a full-fledged Kiss fan by now. I mean, there was no Kiss Army. That wasn't even born yet.
Right.
No, I had painted the cover of Hotter Than Hell on the back of my denim jacket. And a buddy of mine.
Now you're going back to time when you're talking about painting denim jackets. That was the thing.
Yeah. And then and patches were starting to come out. You'd get a patch and stuff on. So they didn't have what battle vests back then. It was either a Wrangler jacket or a Lee jacket, or whatever, some kind of denim jacket. And there was a picture of Kiss that was taken in New York during a photo session, and they're all standing around this bus stop sign, and Paul's up at the top, brushing his hair, and Ace is kind of leaning in like that. And I took that picture and I painted it on the back of my buddy's denim jacket.
Wow.
So when we saw Kiss at the Sunshine Inn in Asbury Park after the show, Gene comes walking out. He's walking around, he had his makeup off, I think. And he sees the back of my jacket, the Hotter Than Hell on it. And he grabs my jacket like this, and he drags me over to Bill a coin. He goes, Guy, look at this. Look at this. Look. He's like, marketing. Marketing. See what this guy's done with our image on his jacket? T-shirts, lunch boxes.
Yeah.
Where can we put us on that kids will take home, the buy-ins like that? So I guess I was a young visionary at what I was doing. I didn't know there were names for such a thing, but I would see a need to do something and I would do it in my own way like that. I had hand painted Kiss buttons with their makeup in reverse. So the white was black and the black was white. And they saw that. And one of them is in when Kiss years later put out the originals package.
Yeah.
The repackaging of the first 3 albums.
Yeah.
And there was a booklet in there.
Yeah.
And it was, sepia tone, brown, and it had a picture of an old Brooklyn fire alarm where you pull the handle.
Yeah.
And it had one of the early Kiss posters on it that Paul had drawn up. For like the Coventry, and you go through the page, and it says "fan submitted" button, and it's a picture of my button I painted of Gene.
Wow!
So it says "fan submitted," but I didn't get any name credit on it. This is stuff they were looking at in my homemade scrapbooks.
Right.
Before I had a camera, I would draw from memory the various poses I remember Gene and Ace and Paul would do, and I would draw them artistically like that in my high school mind. And they would be looking at this stuff and go, and I guess
they're putting in the bank for they're putting in the memory bank for the future.
Yeah. So like that. And so we were watching Kiss rehearse before Ace was in the band, and then we were watching Kiss rehearse after Ace was in the band. Ace was borrowing Budweiser beers off my friend John, because John would come up with a 6-pack with me, my high school friend John Alton. And Ace would be, "Hey, John, can I bum another beer off you? Hey, John, can I bum another beer off you?" And he's drinking all of John's beers, We were able to endear ourselves one way or another to these guys,
Sure.
And I was there at the Coventry when they got the money and they got new Marshall stacks and new shirts and new boots and the fire engine beacons and some flash stuff and flash pots and all. And I was using a different camera. I had a box camera that I borrowed from high school, and I wasn't quite 100% sure on how to use the settings. And some of the pictures came out really strange looking, because like if the shutter stays open too long and they move, the picture blurs. You see, and I've got shots of Gene when he would do that stomping walk.
Oh yeah.
His Godzilla walk, or well, he was copying the monster from 50 Million Miles to Earth. And while the shutter was open and he'd move, it would smear the white of his face across the picture.
Okay.
It looked really weird. And they used these pictures like last year in the A&E special on Early Kiss.
Oh, okay.
I got contacted by Kurt Gooch, and they licensed some of the use of some of my pictures, and I think that might have been one of them in there. So it was my pictures of Kiss at Coventry.
That's cool.
So that was the only time I've ever been paid for my Kiss pictures. Before that, my pictures were used by Ken Sharp. My Fillmore East pictures were used by Ken Sharp in the book Nothing to Lose: Making of Early Kiss, 72 to 75. I wasn't paid for that, but we worked out a deal where they Ken did some favors for me with the other negatives and got some other stuff printed for me.
Nice.
Like that. So we worked, but Ken was the first Kiss author to recognize that I have been excluded and left out and overlooked from the early Kiss history, from all the other books and all the other authors before him. So he said, I've noticed that, and I want to interview you for the book. Give me your memories like we're doing now. And I would like to use some of your pictures with your permission. And they were in that book. And it was a New York Times bestseller.
Wow.
So, and Ken has written books about Elton John and David Bowie and John Lennon and stuff. So he's a recognized rock and roll author. So that helped with some validation as well. And people started seeing a picture by Rik Fox. Oh, that's who took that picture. That's where it came from. Because my pictures have been stolen, and other people's watermarks are on them all around the world for decades, not knowing where they came from.
I would lose my mind.
Well, I didn't know this until one of my fans posted something about Kiss from 1973 on his page. And I said, "Where did you get that picture from?" He says, "Just go to Google and type in Kiss 1973. And it opens up pages and pages of all these images of Kiss on bootleg CDs that people have made.
Right.
A great portion of them are using my pictures of early Kiss. And I don't have Gene's financial wherewithal to track
Sure.
these people down and extract what I'm owed.
Yeah.
Not that they would have anything to pay.
Yeah. Exactly.
But over the decade, and some of them have their own watermarks on my photos. So when I
would be losing my mind.
I got contacted by a Swedish Kiss magazine asking me permission to use my pictures.
Right.
I said on one condition, because they did an article on Lydia Chris, and they included a lot of my pictures of early Kiss. I said one condition: put a disclaimer saying that these photos and many others like them from this particular event were taken by me and stolen by people and are being spread around the world illegally.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, I got the magazine. He did it when it came out. He sent me a copy.
Good.
I had somebody translate it, and it says in Swedish, these pictures were taken by Rik Fox, and somebody has stolen them and is sharing them around the world. So if you see these pictures, know that they belong to Rik Fox. He took the pictures.
Wow.
So, and then other people have come along over time, and there's a guy that put out he's on YouTube. He has a series called the Kiss the Black Books.
Okay.
And he's got, they're huge black books that he's collected of Kiss from the beginning, as far back as you could find anything. And he's got these scrapbooks, and each page is this, page is this, page is this, and there's my pictures. And his name was on the tip of my tongue. I wish I could remember it. He contacted me and said, "Is this picture yours?" "Yeah." "Is this picture yours?" "Yeah." "Is this picture yours?" "Yeah." He goes, that's starting to you're filling in the puzzle pieces that are missing. And asked me permission. He came when I was living in California. He came out to where we lived and brought the books with him, and he kind of interviewed me like we're doing, and took pictures of me signing the books. And I pointed out which of all these pictures were mine.
Wow.
Roger, his name is Roger, and he got on the internet and did a YouTube presentation of his books, saying these pictures. He pointed out these are pictures by Rik Fox. So every once in a while, a fan will come out and help spread the word. In retrospect, to say that this is the source of where these early pictures came from. So, like that.
Now, how about do you have old pictures of the Dolls, or even when Twisted Sister was starting? Were you still involved in the scene around then?
Yeah, I saw once the lineup of the original Twisted Sister before Dee was in the band.
Okay.
They played out at a club in New Jersey that I wound up playing afterwards. And a guy named Michael Valentine was the singer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I think Mel was the bass player. I can't remember the names of the. JJ was in the band. JJ was Twisted Sisters. I just finished reading JJ's book, Twisted Business. And he explains Twisted Sister wasn't Twisted Sister when he joined. He started out as a Jersey band. It was called Silver Star or something like that. The bass player, Mel Starr, was the bass player. He was just this black guy, rock and roll guy, into glitter. And that was the name of the band. And somehow, I forget how he said the name Twisted came up. You guys look all twisted wearing women's outfits. And they came up with the name Twisted Sister. So JJ eventually became the only remaining original member. People don't know Twisted Sister's gone through so many member changes over the years. And when after my stint with the Martian Rock Band in '75, playing Max's and CBGB's, that I became a veteran of the New York rock scene. It was half punk, half glitter and glam. I got picked up by a glam band out of New Jersey called Virgin.
Okay.
And Virgin was like a junior version of another big glam band in Jersey. One of the bigger sellers was a band called Harlow.
Okay.
And Harlow did an Alice Cooper set, and they did a Bowie set, and they did the Animals, and they did T-Rex, and so we were kind of a junior version of them. And when they did an Alice Cooper show, Johnny would come out with a huge boa snake around him. So Virgin was when we did our Alice Cooper thing. Ian Chris also, he knew a girl, a dancer that had like an 8-foot python. So when we would do Alice Cooper, she'd come up, hand it to him, and Ian singing on stage like Alice with the a constrictor around him like that. So we were doing. So we did the glam scene from England. We did Mata Hoople and Queen and Kiss and Alice Cooper and whatnot like that.
Now, did you know the band? They were from Philly, but they did a lot of stuff in Jersey and all, and they were really big, and they did stuff like that. And like all the early Philly bands from the '80s always give this band credit, the Dead End Kids.
I've heard the name. I've never seen them. We had a performer out of Jersey. It was called T. Roth and Another Pretty Face.
Okay.
T is, if you could not afford or ever wait to see Bowie live, if you went to see T. Roth, he was the exact like Xerox of Bowie.
Wow.
He had all these moves where they stop, they do stuff with his eyes, very, very Peter Gabriel, very physically visual.
Okay.
And I mean, the guy was in complete control and command of his body and his senses and awareness that, they were able to gesture whatever they were doing physically as well as the lyrics. And these are the kind of entertainers that really started to stand out.
Gotcha.
And like that. Eventually, T. Roth's drummer was Tico Torres, who wound up in Bon Jovi.
Oh, okay.
Like
sure.
that. But, and it's the whole band wore whiteface and glam and like that. Glitter and glam was huge, except amongst the tough guys, called everybody faggots, like
right.
Anything that looked androgynous or feminine, were automatically categorized as that. I got my share of it too. And then in 75, I was introduced to the first Angel album.
Okay.
It just came out. But the sleeve was black and white close-up shots that Niels Lozauer took of them in the studio. So it was like Yes on steroids. It was like Zeppelin on with keyboards.
Right.
Heavy guitars and orchestrated synthesizers. And I was still into hard rock and Kiss, and Queen was kind of like my crossover. I saw Queen at the Beacon.
Wow.
Like that. I met them the next day. Freddie Mercury got a look at me and went, "Oh, nice," with the satin pants. So it wasn't until Angel's second album, Hell of a Band, came out, 76. Okay. And now we got to see them on the album cover. They're wearing white outfits, close up with the Punky Meadows, with the hair, Mickey Jones. These guys were rock stars.
Yeah.
I said, this is something I can get my teeth into. This was the game changer, because I could look like that. And my hair kind of looked like Mickey Jones's.
Okay.
So that was kind of like, okay, that's going to be my target look. And I worked with that. And as I was when Virgin, we changed members. We became Lust for like 2 weeks for 1 or 2 gigs. Then we changed it to Swan for 1 show. And then it became Sin. I came up with the name Sin in like late 76, early 77. And I came up with this logo with the snake forming the S, the I with the apple, there's the dot, and like that. And I learned about how to write press and promotion just by being around Gene Simmons and reading how Kiss's press packages were written up, and so I started to absorb all this stuff like a sponge.
Gotcha.
And that's how I self-taught, learned how to promote myself, and like that. Because if you don't have a publicity agent, you don't have a press office, who's going to do it?
Yeah, exactly.
And that also made me kind of valuable to whoever I was playing with. He said, "Well, you're really good at that. You write that stuff up. You're really good. You draw that up. You're really good. Take that picture."
Right.
So I was kind of elected into these things because I was half-assed good at what I was doing.
Right.
So when you say, when did you really start playing bass? That was 75. I got into the Martian Rock Band.
Okay.
I was introduced to the Club Max's Kansas City by a girl that I had met walking around in Manhattan. We both had the same haircuts. So it was like, wow, what are the odds of that? And it broke the ice. She introduced me to the club, and in so doing, introduced me to Sebby Castle, today known as Sebastian Black. He's He's a I want to say a magician and a psychic, medium psychic, like that. And Sebi was the band leader of the Martian rock band. They invited me to a gig to see them play, and I watched their show, the original lineup, or the lineup he had. And I said, well, I'm a bass player. And he says, well, again, I had some kind of appeal, some kind of visual thing that they wanted in the band that was missing.
Right.
And this to be true with Steeler and with whoever else I was playing with. So, and I had these ideas, and Sebi and we sat down and talked. Well, the band was based on sci-fi movies from the 50s and 60s, and the old Republic serials, and Commander Cody, the Rocket Man, and like that. So we both had a love of science fiction movies.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the band was kind of based around. And so they really didn't have much of an image. Sebi had a big, looked like a refrigerator box on stage with lights on it and a lightning bolt. And he would come out of this box. And he had a Flying V guitar with extra wings on it. He would put bolted on extra wing, and they were silver. He painted the whole thing silver.
Huh.
And it was really campy 50s sci-fi stuff. So he was really patient with me. And the songs were really easy. Looking back, they were really easy, but I'm still learning. And it was like some of it was 50s doo-wop. It was 1-4-5. It was real easy patterns.
Okay.
And he taught me, we play it this way, play this. It goes like this. It goes like this. I picked up the stuff quick enough. I had an aptitude for it. And then we wound up getting another drummer who hit a lot harder. The drummer they had he was wearing like a silver lame disco kind of a suit. He was kind of goofy, he looked like I want to say Sean Cassidy.
Okay.
In a silver lame suit. It didn't underscore properly what we were trying to do. So we got this other drummer who played a little heavier. We're a 3-piece band. Sebi did all the singing and we background vocals. And in the opening song, "Take Me to Your Leader," you play and then you stop and you go, "Drummer, he's from here." And I'm going to stop. The bass player, Mercury. It's like an introduction of the band members. So now I'm pigeonholed into going, okay, I'm from Mercury. What am I going to be? And the only thing I could say is just based around my time of Kiss. So I sat down in the basement. I had this little vanity with the drawers, and you flip up and had a mirror on it.
Okay.
And I was experimenting with drawings and ideas and concepts. And I said, well, my favorite universal monster was the creature from the Black Lagoon. Okay. He's basically an amphibian.
Yeah.
A cross between a humanoid and an amphibian. I was a big fan of dinosaurs when I was a kid. I had books all about dinosaurs. I read a lot when I was a kid. I studied, researched, National Geographic, Reader's Digest, and I loved dinosaurs. I said, what if you could cross a dinosaur or an amphibian with a human? Not knowing years later in UFO lore about reptilians. Okay, people say that there are reptilians that come from another universe or another solar system that have been here. And I said, okay, so saurian is like Latin for dinosaur. So because the word comes out of Latin or Greek, dinosaur, terrible lizard, and or Tyrannosaurus Rex. So I figured, let me do something here, and I got this frosty cream highlight makeup, and comes in little tubes.
Okay.
I'd get a fistful of them, and they were frosted green. And then I got a couple in frosted blue. And anywhere my skin would show, I put this stuff on, and I have pictures of it, and it made my skin like green with a frosty tint to it. And I would take a black eyeliner pencil and upside down, and I would draw scales on me, wherever the skin showed. And then I would do, from here up, I'd do my face. I cover my eyebrows with derma wax, and then I would draw them up like Spock, and then fill that in with blue. And then, of course, Gene being an influence on me, he would spit blood. So I got green food coloring, and I put a couple of drops on my tongue. So now it completes the package. The whole inside of my mouth was green. So Gene would go,
That's hysterical.
like that, and I would stick my tongue out. It would be green. It really sold the whole package, like that. And Sebi used to shoot fire out of the headstock out of his guitar. It was a magic trick, stage
God.
magic.
Right.
He knew where all the magic stores were on Times Square.
Okay.
All the stage magic stores, like that. So he sent me to the store, and I got the stuff I needed to get. And you get in little pads, get something called flash paper.
Mm-hmm.
This is when you see a magician do something with his hand, and it would be like a ball of fire in it.
Yep.
And that's you confederate it from an original point where you light it, and you go like that with your hand, and it looks like you've got fire in your hand.
We used to use that in the pro wrestling world.
Right. And that's what my igniter would be when I would shoot fire. I took Sebi's trick of shooting fire out of the end of the guitar, the headstock. He'd have it on the back, and it would be like a little squeeze bottle, like for a nasal spray.
Okay.
A little black bottle, and it had just a little bit of a nib of a straw, and the powder was called Dragon's Breath. And if you pour it in a pile on a table and throw a match on it, nothing will happen.
Wow.
It has to be aerated in the air.
Huh.
Like that. So you'd squeeze the bottle, and it would shoot the powder into the air. Once the powder is in the air, you light it, and it's like a flamethrower.
Right.
Like that. It has to be aerated. So I incorporated that into. I had silver cocktail gloves that go up to the ladies' gloves. It would go up to the hair, and I would cut a hole in the tip of one of them. And if you remember how Spider-Man, when he would shoot his webs, he'd hit the inside of his palm. Let me get their center there. He'd go like that.
Right.
And the web would shoot out his wrist.
Yeah.
So I put this together, and I put the bottle under the gloves, and I have a regular cocktail straw would fit perfectly over the end, and it ran up my finger. And there's a little hole out of the end of it. I used the flash paper as my igniter, and as the flame is going across, I squeeze, in my hand and shoot the powder out of my finger. And I go
unreal.
Like that, and flame coming out of my hand, out of my finger. So these were, it wasn't so much competitive over what you're doing. What can I do better?
Right.
We thought of it as, what else can I do to add to the show?
Mm-hmm.
And Sebi thought this was like the greatest thing since sliced bread. He's now got a bandmate who's like on the same wavelength.
Right.
And he looked at it as the same thing, not competitive, but okay, I'll show you how to do this. And then I would figure it out at home and come back with this, like that. Okay. Now in the 70s, in the 60s and 70s, like the Fillmore East and indoor concerts, they would have something called a light show behind the band, which they had an overhead projector, and they would pour these oils on it, and you push down on a piece of transparency, and it would squish the oils together, and all these different colors. It'd make a psychedelic, like you want to. They did acid back then, so they would put this and project it behind the band, so the people who were tripping had something to look at, because the bands were kind of boring back then, And so I figured, what can we do that's like that, but not the same? And my dad had an 8mm projector. Wow. Now, if you remember in the famous Monsters of Filmland and the science fiction magazines, you could buy little 5-minute snippets on 8mm reel.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Of horror movies and science fiction movies, and Frankenstein and the Wolfman and the Mummy and the Creature and like that, and Rocket Man, Commander Cody. And I took the camera and I put it behind us, aiming at the wall behind us, and there would be an interlude of some kind. I found spacey music I could play on the side on a record player, and Sebastian would be doing something. Or we had a guy that was a friend of the band. He wasn't a musician. He was kind of like a human prop, and he had this silver. He had a silver rubber robot mask, and he put on, and a cape, and he'd come out with a ball and chain, a medieval ball and he'd do something on the stage. While everybody's got their attention on that, I'm running around behind, and I got the camera set up, and I put the film in, and I turned the film on, and they come out, and now you've got a movie projection on the wall behind us of Michael Rennie and Day the Earth Stood Still, with the saucer would land in Washington, and Gort the robot would come out while we're playing. You see, or Commander Cody, he'd run and jump and he'd be flying with his bullet helmet, and this would be on the wall projected behind us, like
That's
that.
awesome.
And so I was again being a visionary because there was nobody doing this back then. I was thinking, what's the next level we could take this to?
I'm surprised you didn't try to revive the Martians in L.A. and do something like that there.
Funny you should say that. In the '70s, there was a magazine out of New York called Rock Scene.
Yes.
And they would have pictures. But in New York, we had Bob Gruen was a famous New York rock photographer. And in L.A., he would fly out to L.A. The Ramones were signed by this time, and they would. These guys were on tour shooting Ramones and Blondie and whatnot, and they'd come out to L.A. And we got our first glimpse of the LA version of the Martian rock band was a group called Zolar X. And they all looked, there was an episode of Star Trek where this alien had white hair that would come to a point down in the front like this.
Okay.
And he had these antennas. And one of the antennas had a microphone in it or something where they could spy and listen to so it was a fake antenna, but they all looked like that Star Trek alien. They had blue skin, white wigs with pointy hair in the front that would come up like this, and spacey looking instruments. So LA already had its own version of a sci-fi alien type rock band.
Wow!
And you can find some of their stuff on YouTube. It's still up.
That's crazy.
So what happened was as we started to pick up momentum. And Martian Rock Band got more recognition now than they ever did. We played with Blondie. We played Max's. We were part of that whole scene. We also rehearsed in a loft. There's a famous building. It's still there in Manhattan, 251 West 30th Street. But again, a bunch of industrial lofts each floor, like Kiss had. And we had our own loft in there. It was like, I want to say maybe 20 feet by 12.
Okay.
And we'd set up at one end and rehearse like that. Sebi gave our new drummer, Dennis, money to go pay the rent to the landlord. Well, Dennis took off and bought drugs, and we never saw him again. So he ripped off the money. We had no more money to rehearse at the loft. So the band broke up.
No more money, no more drummer.
No more drummer, and we couldn't rehearse. So that was that. That's how the band broke up. We just never got back together again, and unfortunately, we never recorded anything. Sebi said there's nothing on tape. He says everything's up here. He goes, I got all the songs still up here.
Wow.
And over the years, we discussed if there was ever an opportunity for him and I to get together, we could record this stuff.
Right.
And now I'm a much better bass player, so playing that stuff would be like in my sleep.
Sure. Sure.
It's really, really simple. Take me to your leader, the greatest magician in the galaxy, Mr. Lady and Mrs. Man, kind of cliche, campy 50s.
Yeah.
Some of it was doo-wop stuff. I lost my baby on the dark side of the moon. That was like a 50s doo-wop song. Same progression, that kind of stuff. And it's just too bad we never got anything recorded. Sebastian's still out there. He's doing his whole medium psychic shtick thing,
okay.
Entertainer. His house is just like the Addams Family. It's set up like it looks like it's vintage Addams Family, Victorian, black. The whole.
That's hysterical.
It's cool. Like that. So we talk every once in a while. If somebody brings it up, I'll put the pictures up on the internet. And I recently came across another shot of me that I took at some girl's house with full makeup, and I had these silver boots. They were like Ace Frehley's boots that came up to the ankle. They were like a wedged platform, and they had these rollerball studs in them. So I was, and I got a picture of me sitting there going like that. There's one from the vaults. And this was me at like 19 or 20. I wasn't even 21 when I was playing in Max's, like that. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, how do you end up like eventually going to LA? It's like, was that even on your radar?
No, not at all. Not at all. It was a series of replacing bass players. Like I said, after the Martian Rock Band, by the next summer of '76, I was working on in the West Village on 8th Street, a couple of doors down from Electric Lady Studios.
Okay.
In walks a rock and roll looking guy and his girlfriend, fiance, I don't know. And immediately it's the look. It was the icebreaker. Who are you? What do you do? I'm a bass player. Oh, we're looking for a bass player. All right, we're in a band called Virgin. I said, I saw your picture in Rock Scene magazine. They took a picture down at the Jersey Shore, and they're all standing there on the boardwalk. And I was to replace their bass player. He brought me in and like that, and so I wound up auditioning for and getting the gig with Virgin, which became Lust, which became Sin, and it was Sin up until around 77, 78. You know, we changed members and whatnot like that, but we played the Jersey clubs and like that, and while we were rehearsing in Manhattan, the Dictators were across the hall.
Okay.
In another studio, and they heard us. Okay. So when they stopped playing, they came in, and in walks, Ross, the boss. Right. My buddy Ross. Then Mark Mendoza, the bass player.
Sure.
And I knew Richard from the Dictators from the first album, the original lineup. And so I hit it off with Mark and Ross, to the point of Mark wound up becoming a roadie for Twisted Sister. And when their bass player left, Mark was in the right place at the right time. He stepped in and became the bass player.
Okay.
So he says, I'm a Twisted Sister now. I said, oh, that's pretty cool. I remember them. He says, yeah, come and see me play. Come and see me play. And he gave me his home number. His real name's Mark Glickman.
Okay.
Nice Jewish kid. And I'd call up his house, and his mother would go, Mark, Rick's on the phone, like that. And he'd say, yeah, we're playing at Speak. So we're playing at this club. We're playing at, I'll have you on the list, like that, And I'd go down to see Twisted Sister, and I look like Punky Meadows. I got the hairs growing.
Right.
Like that. I look like a rock star, I look just like what he looked like. And I walk in the club, and Mark's, hey, come on, hang out by backstage. D. Snyder comes over, he goes, who the fuck is this guy? Ain't no fucking rock stars in this building besides me. Okay? He's out of here. Get him out of here. And ever since then, D's had me up his ass. Every time I'd show up at Detroit's or Speaks or wherever they were playing, he'd see me, and he'd either try to get me thrown out, which would cause a scene, and then Mark would step in and tell D, shut the fuck up. He's my friend. He's a guest here. And then D would like storm off. Or he'd see me in the crowd in front, digging the show, and he put the lights on this guy, and he picked me out and he try to humiliate me and shame me, look at him standing there with his arms closed. What do you think, you're some big rock star or something? We're not good enough for you to get into the show, and he would pick me out and shame me in front of everybody, and I never did anything to the guy, Years later, after Stars broke up, I'm friends with Richie Rano and Joe Doobie and those guys. Richie put a band together called Hardcore. There's a 3-piece band, and they were the opening act for Twisted Sister at the Calderone on New Year's Eve. I think it was, I want to say 78. So Peter Scantz, the bass player, asked me if I'd bass tech for him.
Okay.
I said, sure, fine, no problem. I don't know. So I helped Doobie set up his drums, and I helped Peter set up his bass rig like that. And sound check, D comes walking out, sees me backstage on the side. He goes, went ballistic. He goes, what the fuck is this guy doing here? Get him the fuck out of here. And everybody had to calm D down. I go, he's working for them. What the hell's wrong with you?
What the hell?
Yeah, and again,
because you looked better than him. That's why.
I would pose no threat to him. He's the star of the show. What am I doing? I'm doing bass tech for Peter Scantz. So it's like every opportunity he saw me, he would try to do something to shoot me down. And he went so far as in 85, there was a really cool rock magazine out of Japan called Burn.
Yeah.
Okay. My band Sin was in it. We were we were 5 positions on their import chart. 5 songs we had on. Even when I met Michael Schenker, he goes, "Hey, we're in the same magazine." He recognized me. Wow, pinch me. D. Snyder, Rik Fox. Oh yeah, he's famous for being famous. He makes fake backstage passes so he could come hang out backstage and eat the band's food, drink their beer. He's saying
What?
this in an interview. A Japanese fan translated it for me. He's like talking shit about me in a major fucking heavy metal magazine. You see?
Oh, now have you ever talked to D? Years later? No.
Nope. He hates me to this day. It doesn't matter what I did with Steeler. It doesn't matter that I was the first bassist on U.S. soil to go toe-to-toe with Yngwie Malmsteen on a daily basis. That means nothing to him.
Oh, shit.
So, I mean, to this day, I'm friends with Mark. I'm friends with JJ. D, whatever.
Did they ever say to you, like, what his deal was?
He's gone through life and had everything in his hand, and houses and boats and vehicles, and then gone nothing. And he's lost it all. And he's tried to repackage himself again and do a radio show and maybe do a movie or do a video and put his own band together. So he's been able to, recycle himself to some level of modicum of success, however you want to measure that. Success is defined differently by different people. But he's been able to be, highly visual. And, of course, he was at the PMRC with Frank Zappa, and sticking up for rock. And one minute he comes across like a Democratic liberal. And then the other crowd, sometimes he comes across like a conservative. Yeah. So the guy is like constantly flip-flopping in his political views. And I don't know. I don't know if an opportunity would ever present itself where he would have he's apologized to various people over the years for things he's said and done. I don't know if he would ever do that with me, because I've never done anything openly to offend him. It's just one of those people that comes along in somebody's life and you hate them. Yeah. For no reason. You have a personal beef or something, and it's like a tick under your saddle, and it just, for the rest of your life, that person pisses you off. And even if they do something good and accomplish something, that pisses you off even more because they've accomplished something. Yeah. Exactly. Some people have that black hole that can never be filled. Right. And I sit there and watch some of the stuff he says and does, and I go, what a load of shit. I don't want to slam the guy, but I mean, he spent a lot of time of his career slamming me, and I never did anything to him. And I like Twisted Sister. I like the band. I like the music. Right. I was there early days watching them from, early on, like that. So, but anyway, getting off on a tangent here. Virgin, we had Sin, and then there was a period where after Sin dissolved, our singer Ian left to go play drums with another cover band. So I was hanging out, and then again, part of the rock scene in New York, and it was a club called the Great Gildersleeves. Okay. It was on a Bowery. It was just a few doors down from CBGB's. Okay. This was like a huge club, big stage, big upstairs. I don't know how many couple of hundred people it held. The bar was like the whole length of the building. I mean, at the end of the night, when 4:00, the clubs close in New York. Yeah. So to get everybody out of everybody quit bullshitting and get out of the club so they could clean up. One of the bartenders, my friend Tony Sirio, was a bass player in Jersey. He would walk to this bar, had to be about 60, 70 feet long. And he would walk down the whole length of the bar pouring ammonia. And the smell of the ammonia, everybody would run out of the club. Like that, the smell of ammonia would clear the club out. Oh, that'll do it. But bands who had a first album out, or mid-range, just starting to get a feel of transition from a club stage to a bigger stage before they go to a concert stage, a theater, would play there. And the Brats played, all the New York bands, Brats, Moonbeam, Jet Set. There was a Doors tribute band that would play there, a Crystal Ship, T. Roth, Pretty Face. Bon Jovi played there, early Bon Jovi. It was nobody. It was like the other club to be at. We had a huge network of people that hung out there. So I wound up being friends with so many of the bands. I had to do something. If I couldn't audition and get in the band, I wound up doing work either as a guitar tech or a bass tech, drum tech, and do lights. And they had a smaller version of concert lighting. They had the park hands. They had a follow spot and the lights on one side of the room. Over there on the other side of the room was the PA, the soundboard, and I would do the lights. So I wound up I worked for Trigger. I worked for Face Dancer, who was on Capitol Records. I worked for Lover. I worked for Dina Regine. I worked for Thor. A lot of the bands
Wow.
that were, out of the New York clubs. And in doing so, I got to rub shoulders with literally everybody in the record. There's all the New York offices, Elektra and Capitol and A&M. I got to know all these people. They all networked with each other because they were all scouting for the same bands like that. Sterling,
Gotcha.
all these bands I worked with and that did albums and stuff like that. And Felix Pappalardi from Mountain was going to work with Thor.
Okay.
I was doing lights for Thor. I was going to be in his band, and I wound up doing lights for him. And so, we get to rub shoulders with like Felix fucking Pappalardi.
Sure.
And he's telling me all these little secrets about how Mountain used to get their sound and like that. And he looked at me and he goes, your passion for what it is you do. He goes, it keeps people like me feeling young. He paid me actually a really nice compliment. So that was a nice hallmark for me in getting to on a level playing field with a legend.
Sure.
There was no condescension. There was no talking down like rock star. It was like us, two guys talking, like that. So I would have moments like that where I'd get to meet, I met Keith Emerson from Emerson, Lake and Palmer, like that. I had no idea how short the guy was. Like that, everybody went to Gildersleeves like that. And then after Gildersleeves would close at 4 a.m, there was an after hours club a few blocks down called the Nursery. And I would bartend there with other rockers. And so after the Palladium would close, after Studio 54 would close, all the other clubs would close. They'd come down, everybody hang out the Nursery.
Oh, okay.
And here's me one night waiting online to use the bathroom. It was a line. And I turn around and look behind me. There's this tall black guy with a raincoat, just a regular, like a detective. And I said, this guy looks familiar. And I went, holy shit, that's Phil Lynott from Thin Lizzy.
Oh, shit.
And I said, Johnny the Fox beats Jimmy the Weed. That song. He goes, yeah. I said, is that the same Johnny who got his face slapped and the boys are back in town? You get to ask your legends these oddball questions out of left field. It's the strangest places you meet rock stars. Waiting in line for the bathroom, like that. So, and that's what I was doing until I say 1980. The girl I was dating from Jersey, we go to the Jersey clubs and see the bands like that, and all the famous New Jersey clubs. And we went to this place called the Orangeburg Pub, and we saw a band called the E. Walker Band.
Okay.
The E. Walker Band was like all your Jersey cover bands or Long Island cover bands. You're essentially a live jukebox. You're playing whatever it is on the top 40 on the radio.
Yeah.
Okay. And E. Walker, I was number 7 out of 8 bass players. So some bands have revolving doors with musicians.
Right.
E. Walker was they were not as big as Twisted Sister on that upper level. They were like a medium range, but very consistent club band that played what the people wanted to hear. And they played 6 nights a week, 4 or 5 sets a night. And I was at my girlfriend's house. The phone rings and it's the keyboard player. And I don't know how he got the phone number. And he says, we're interested in you. If you want to, come try out for us. He goes, come up to Orangeburg Pub. They played on Sunday nights. Come and we'll talk. Like, all right. We go up. Orangeburg Pub was just across the state line from New Jersey, just into upstate New York, Orangeburg, New York. And this club was packed 7 nights a week.
Wow.
Packed. And a lot of great bands played through there. And so it was a kind of prestigious place to play. Though it wasn't big, but it was one of the places to play on the circuit. And I watched them play, and they were okay. Doors, Judas Priest, Joe Jackson, Led Zeppelin, The Who. They played some new wave stuff, punk stuff, everything from soup to nuts. Joe Jackson and Judas Priest. And it was packed. The place was packed. It was like you're shoulder to shoulder in there. It was hot and sweaty. And that's what the clubs hired you for, to keep people drinking. Because the drinks are like, if you're in before 10 o'clock, shots are 50 cents. Ladies, drink free until 10. Incentives.
Yep.
Like that. And at that point, people are so drunk, they stay there.
Sure.
Until 4 a.m. So they said, we'd like you to join the band. this guy's going to go. This was Sunday night.
Okay.
They gave me a list of about 40, almost 50 songs. I was supposed to start that Wednesday. Monday, Tuesday. I had 2 days to learn 40 or 50 songs, and I was to start with them on that Wednesday, that Wednesday.
Oh, shit.
And talk about woodshedding. This is the first time I had ever done anything like that before. And I had running ideas about how some of the songs went.
Right.
Some of them had some complexities, and some of them were real simple. You know, it was just knowing the formula, where the changes were, like that. They said, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. They kept saying, don't worry about it. You'll be fine. So that Wednesday comes, I walk in Wayne, New Jersey, it was a club called Mother's.
Okay.
This place was massive. And Wayne, New Jersey was like upscale money. That was a money town. So this club, depending on the band, was packed. And they had several rooms. That bands who were starting out had a smaller room.
Okay.
Medium bands had another bigger room. Then it was like a main stage. It was a bigger stage. So I walk in the afternoon, I don't know, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, sound check, setup time. And I stood there and I watched them fire the other bass player right in front of me.
Oh, shit.
He didn't even know that was his last. He was gone. They didn't say anything to him.
Whoa.
Yeah, so that was awkward. And I made a mental note because they said if they did it to him, they could do it.
Exactly.
To me.
Sure.
Who for whatever reason.
Who knows?
But and I said, I hope this works, guys. I said I did the best I can to learn as many of these songs. I said, just watch. The keyboard player's name was Ace Richards. He played keyboards and guitar. So just watch me. Just listening to keyboards. You know, the singer, guitar player Ray Darr never wore shoes on his feet. He always played barefoot. He wore spandex pants, either an open shirt or no shirt at all. Played a flying V. He had this big mountain of blonde curly hair came over his face, and he played barefoot. Even if there's broken glass in the club, he played barefoot. He wore clogs. I mean, before you get on stage, you take off the clogs, and he's barefoot. I don't understand it. So, and here's me. I go on stage, white boots, white spandex pants, white spandex jacket, white scarf, Punky Meadows hair, and I'm playing an Ibanez Explorer body bass.
Yeah.
The lights go up, and all of the E. Walker fans went, "Who's this?" Like the French knight in Monty Python when he sees the wooden rabbit. He's on a castle and he goes. That's what everybody they went. Where did this guy come from? And the lights are just sparkling off the white outfit.
Sure.
And like I said, we did Zeppelin and we did Doors, we did Who, we did stuff. And you take a break, and then you do like 4 sets, 3 or 4 sets, like that.
Right.
And who's in the front row was a fan of the band is a girl named Patty Brandt.
Okay.
Patty's cousin is Barry Brandt, the drummer in Angel.
Oh, okay.
She gets on the phone to her aunt going, "Tell Barry there's a guy here looks like he belongs in the band Angel. He looks like Punky."
Wow.
Meanwhile, I had already met Angel several times.
Okay.
Like that. And while they were out at dinner after the shows and stuff like that, and I was showing Punky one of my scrapbooks, and his wife Fran came over, and she's looking at the picture. She goes, "Punky, I never seen these pictures of you. Where were these taken at?" He goes, "That's not me. That's Rick." She goes, "No, that's you." He goes, "No, that's how much we looked alike." We fooled his own wife.
That's wild.
Yeah. So Angel had such an influence on me, as I said, as a game player, a game changer, that I was wearing white on stage. And of course, with each set, you have a costume change. Otherwise, you're wearing sweaty clothes.
Right.
So I had a big one of my dad's bags from the Navy, his duffel bags.
Okay.
With the handles, and it had all my costume stuff. I had a set change, a set change, set change like that. The guys in the band all smoked pot except me. I was not a 420 pot guy. So I was never 100% accepted into the boys club because I didn't sit there and party with them in between sets.
Right.
These guys smoked pot like chimneys. I didn't. So there was always that little bit of separation between them and me, like that. And it got to the point where, the stage manager who drove the truck and set up the PA and the gear, he started to become a pain in my ass, and I was a pain in his ass. I was the new guy. I was attracting the girls. Their following increased noticeably because I was the new guy in the band.
Right.
I mean, the other guy I replaced wasn't bad looking, Italian looking, dark curly hair. He was a good looking guy. I posed no threat to anybody here that I could see.
Right.
But all of a sudden, the girls want to come talk to me and whatever. And I had a girlfriend. She was friends with a lot of these girls. Everybody knew everybody in the club. They got jealous. So they would have a burr up their ass about me. Another thing is I didn't have a car.
Okay.
I told them that at the get-go. I said, Jersey, you got to have a car. These gigs are all over the place.
Yeah.
I said, I don't have a car. I don't have a way to get to a lot of these shows. I told them that right up front. And the girl I was going out with said, well, a lot of times I can drive you to the show. I'll stick around for the show, and then I'll drive you at the end of the night back home. Or friends that I made in the crowd, various other girls, whatever, they would bypass going home where I was at, and they would drop me off and bring me home.
Nice. Okay.
Well, I'm walking in the door at like 5:30, 6 in the morning, because I played all night.
Sure.
Now, I made about, what was I getting? 200, 300, 400, something like that a week, cash.
Okay.
That was my day job.
Yeah.
6 nights a week, 4 cents a night, like that. And Monday I had off, and I go do my laundry up the street. I was at an apartment in Jersey. I'd go around the corner, do my laundry. Tuesday night, or they had one of the roadies pick me up in his car.
Wow.
One of the road crew guys would pick me up, and my clothes are clean, and let's rock for the rest of the week, that kind of thing. So I did that for about a year and a half. A couple of guys came down from Toronto, and they were scouting, and they liked us, and they asked us to come up and play in Canada, and in Toronto. So we changed our name to Spitfire. We had some originals that we recorded, and we played for about a week and a half in Toronto. That was a little mini tour.
Okay.
It was like 5 clubs we played at, three nights at each club, something like that. I had a custom pair of boots made, but Thor recommended that there's a boot maker up there in Toronto that I go to. And this guy was like the boot maker to the stars, Master John. The boots for Sabbath, for Dio, for everybody, all the big stars. Had platforms and fancy boots made by this guy. So I still have them here. And I did that, we did that, and we came back, and it was just some friction growing in the band. And like I said, it didn't gel because I wasn't a pot smoker. Things started to come to a head. They played some practical jokes on me up in Canada, and got into my room over the balcony and cleaned out my fridge, took all my food, my beer, everything,
Wow.
and like that. So I left the band, and the girl I was going out with, like I said, a lot of people know each other in the clubs. She met this other girl whose boyfriend was a guitar player. This is where Shrapnel Records first comes on the radar.
Okay.
Mike Varney and Shrapnel Records. Her boyfriend is a guitar player, had in a band called Aggressor.
Okay.
And they put out a song called Predator, I think it was. And it was on Mike Varney had a series called US Metal. And it would showcase all of these up-and-coming pistolero shredding guitar players. Tony McAlpine and those kind of guys. And David Ferrara is one of the guys that was showcased on this album.
Okay.
So the two girls introduced us, the guys to each other, me and David. I'm a Capricorn. He's a Capricorn. He's a smart-ass, wise mouth. I'm the same thing. We hit it off. And he's like Eddie Van Halen. He's one of these,
Okay.
Yngwie noodlers, but this is before Yngwie. Like that, because the only thing we had that was at the time like that, the deal breaker was Eddie Van Halen, the game changer. So we put a band together, Aggressor, a real band. We got a singer, we got a drummer, and we were doing all that real heavy stuff that E. Walker wouldn't do.
Okay. So
we were doing Iron Maiden, Van Halen, Scorpions, Rush, AC/DC. I got to sing some stuff and
oh, cool,
like that. I sang. We did Wrathchild by Iron Maiden. Yeah, we did the intro to 2112 by Rush. like that. A lot of Scorpion stuff like that, and Judas Priest. I sang. We did Hell Bent for Leather. I sang lead on Hell Bent for Leather, like that, and that kind of Van Halen, that kind of stuff. And we were doing that for a few months. And again, I was working again during the day down in the village, the same street in a different store, right by Electric Lady Studios.
Okay.
And these kids come walking in. They were vacationing from California. They said they came to see Twisted Sister play at some festival with a whole bunch of bands. I don't remember what it was. And of course, here's me looking like Punky Meadows.
Sure.
Behind the counter. And there was the icebreaker, who are you? What do you do? Like that. I'm a bass player playing a band here called Aggressor, and like that. We just played the other night. And they said, well, you kind of resemble this guy we know in California. He's got a band called Circus Circus. I said, you mean like the hotel in Vegas? Yeah, but he's going to change the name. He's changing it to something else. You would fit perfect in his band. And we got to talking about it. I said, well, I'm friends with Twisted Sister, and they went gaga. He's like, you actually know the band? Yeah, they're friends of mine. And they were Kiss fans. They were huge Kiss fans. I told them the story about how I know Kiss.
Sure.
Again, wow, you must be almost as famous as the band. If you're that close to actually knowing them and being friends with them. These kids used to go to the Starwood when it was open.
Okay.
And you can mix and mingle with the rock players real easy.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
So it's easy to get to meet them and talk to them like that. So, coming from California to New York, it's a different set of rules. So asked me for a phone number as a contact. Never in a million years did I imagine that I would ever uproot from New York and go to Los Angeles.
Right.
It never entered my wheelhouse. And I had a picture in my bag of me on stage with a spandex outfit on. I put a phone number. I said, here, like that. And never saw them again. So I figured that was it. It's gone. The picture's gone, whatever.
Sure.
And about 2-3 weeks later, I get a phone call from California. It's Blackie Lawless.
Now, was he Blackie Guzman still at the time, or Blackie Lawless?
He changed his name. I didn't know about him playing with Killer Kane yet.
Okay.
I know. Let me take that back. Rock Scene magazine had a picture. They do of the LA bands as well as the New York bands, and there was a picture of Killer Kane, and Arthur was wearing like a doctor's white smock.
Okay.
And Blackie was like leaning back against the wall, and he had those black makeup around his eyes.
Huh.
And he looked like one of the type of guitar players out of Detroit.
Okay.
Detroit always had great guitar players, but it had that look. And I didn't put the two and two together, but he said, I got the picture here. And so tell me about yourself. And I told him, they said, these kids said, Kiss and like that. I said, yeah, I watched Kiss form before Ace was in the band. I was friends with Twisted Sister. I was friends with all the bands in the New York scene. I said, I got friends on the record labels, like that. And he started telling me these stories about how you can take risks in life that may get you closer to your goals. Real Zen stuff.
Okay.
So, it's be like the bug on the leaf. If you stay back by the stem where it's thicker and safer, you won't get blown off the leaf, but the leaf doesn't taste as good. But if you take a chance and go out further to the edge of the leaf where you stand a chance of getting blown off, but the leaf tastes better, the reward is better. If you go take that's one of the stories he told me. Okay, I see the armchair psychology in this. So he said, well, we'll fly you out, try you out for them. I said, listen, I don't have any. Can you send me a demo? I don't know what you seem like. So he sent me a demo tape of early stuff, Harley Hart, Sex Drive, Don't Know Who I Am. It was just some of his early but hard rock stuff. And I said, I'm playing the clubs. I don't have a demo. I don't have I have clippings from the papers.
Right.
The club I've played at. He goes, that's all right. That's all right. I sent him some of those. So he sent me the tape. And it was like a little connected dot to when I was watching Kiss in the loft. Here again is another band with a sound style I've never heard before.
Right.
Real heavy. There was nobody else around playing that kind of music.
Wow.
You know, real
And this was
heavy.
1980?
This was 81.
81. Okay.
Yeah, this is like late summer, early fall of 81.
Okay.
And I was still doing gigs with Aggressor at this time. Because I remember, like, in January, the end of January, somewhere near the end of January, New Year's Eve or something, I played my last show with Aggressor at a club in upstate New York, just up the road from the Orangeburg pub. And I remember the snow on the ground and being really cold right before I left. So I'm hearing this music, and it's real heavy, loud guitars and heavy. The lyrics were pretty cool. There was a lot of anger and punch in the energy of the songs. So they made an arrangement to fly me out from I was living in Jersey at the time, so fly me out to California just to try out. I mean, you know, you audition for a band, you're generally in the same state.
Yeah, exactly.
Not, you know, the same county or somewhere near. You know, Brooklyn, you go to Manhattan. Manhattan, you go to Jersey. Whatever.
Yeah,
it's easier to get to. You're only hours away from your home. So I get on the plane. He goes, "How tall are you?" What is this, Kiss? How tall am I? Well, we're all tall guys. You know, I said, "Okay." I had boots with heels on them, so I wore those. You know, and Capital Airlines, February 4th, 1982. I fly across the country. I get off the plane. I see this tall head of black hair off in the distance, standing at like a head over everybody else in the crowd. That was Blackie. And Randy was with him, Randy Piper, Tony Richards, and a guy who was driving Blackie around because his car was broke, a guy named Mike Solon. Mike Solon is Eddie Solon's brother. Eddie Solon was Ace Frehley's guitar tech and one of the first sound guys for Kiss.
Oh, wow.
So there's a dot connected to Kiss.
Okay.
I was never everything said about Blackie hanging out with Ace in the Bronx when they were kids. That was, I think that's something for magazines to sell stories.
Huh.
Because we never talked about that when I was in the band. Mike Solon is also the guy who plays the bartender in the W.A.S.P video Blind in Texas.
Okay.
We walk in and go, "We're here to play a gig." And he goes, "What's a gig?"
Yeah. And
he pours the shot glass and it's like acid on the bar. That's Mike Solon.
Okay.
So Mike would get off of work, pick us up, bring us down to Buena Park, to, you know, not far from Disneyland, to Randy's rehearsal studio, Magnum Opus. And Mike would sit around while we rehearsed, and he'd drive us back to Blackie's house up in Hollywood. Blackie had a rental rental cottage.
Okay.
There, a little tiny little rental cottage, and that's where I stayed. And so, in trying to adjust to the jet lag, he took me out to the Troubadour. Troubadour's legendary club, biggest acts played there. And we walk in, and it's packed. You know, it's elbow to elbow at the bar. And I guess inside the door, you walk in. There's Kevin DuBrow. Quite right.
Right.
He had DuBrow then at the time. It was between Quiet Rights. And I walked. Again, the only person in Los Angeles that looked like that was Punky Meadows.
Right.
Because he lived there, so everybody knew Punky. I walked in with that. They said, "You're not Punky. You're not as tall as him." And so I hit it off in a conversation with Kevin, and he was a nice guy, you know, very vocal and doesn't mince words. You know, he called it called a spade like that, and he was the first one to tell me, "Watch your ass, watch your back."
Wow.
In Los Angeles, there's nothing as loyalty and friendship. Everybody's got a knife, and everybody's got a back to put it in.
Oh shit.
So watch your ass. He was the first one to give me that advice. So like that, we're hanging out, David Lee Roth at the Rainbow. At the Troubadour. With various other local rockers and hangers on of the scene.
Sure.
So after about an hour or so of that, Blackie goes, "Let's go up to the Rainbow." Okay, I'm a stranger in a strange land. I don't know what these places are. So we go up to the Sunset Strip. We walk into the Rainbow. This is like where the Zeppelin used to hang out and have parties. It's a legendary club. All the famous rockers would go. Deep Purple, Zeppelin, everybody. So, and the place was pretty crowded. It was pretty packed. Blackie gets us a table. We're sitting there across from people at a booth. The first time I've ever seen people eat pizza with a knife and a fork. In New York,
that don't happen.
We fold the pizza.
Fold it and come on.
And I'm laughing out loud. And Blackie goes, "Shh! What do you like?" I said, "People eating pizza here with a knife and a fork." He goes, "This ain't New York. This is what they do out here." You have to, because the pizza in LA, you pick it up and it goes like this.
Yeah.
You know, everything comes off the pizza. So, and then a little while later, who shows up? Boop, 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 boop. David Lee Roth helps himself, sits down at our table. Who does this happen to? You know, the average Joe, this does not happen to.
Right.
It was me, Blackie, David Lee Roth sitting at our table, you know, like that and hanging out. I said, yeah, I saw Van Halen. I saw when you played at the Palladium. And I think it was 70, 78, 79. I said, after the show was over and you left, I went backstage. I got your towel. I still have it. Like that. So I saw a lot of bands at the Palladium. I knew a girl whose uncle was one of the light guys, the follow spot guys.
Nice. So
I was able to get in and down front row at all these shows at the Palladium, which we'll play into later when I'm in Steeler. But so I February 6th comes. We go down to Brandy's studio. Now it's time to do the deed. And they had Hellion, On Your Knees, Hellion, BAD, Sleeping in the Fire, and School Days. Those are the first 5 songs. And I sat down in the middle of the room. It was a huge room. I sit in the room, and they plug in and they play, without bass. They just did Randy and Blackie and Tony. Tony had just come from Great White.
Okay.
My friend Gary, who was we played with, it was his sister at the time. Gary left and joined Great White. It was called Dante Fox.
Okay.
Gary Holland, and they swapped drummers. Gary Holland left playing with Blackie. He had it up to here. He couldn't stand. He went and played with Dante Fox, which became Great White. And their drummer, Tony Richards, came and joined and played with Blackie. And at this point, it was called Sister.
Right.
And they had a logo of just lowercase letters, the word Sister, in an upside-down pentagram that was on fire. And that was it. I met the guy who was managing them at the time. This guy named Forney. He gave me one of the T-shirts, which I lost over the years. So I watched him go through the set twice. He says, all right, come on up. Now's the moment. Why I flew across the United States. So we finagled the bass rig, and I plug in, and I had, again, I had an aptitude to, I could hear where the changes, verse, chorus is formula stuff.
Right.
So I was picking it up as best as I could. Now, as a guy who was influenced by musicians from the 70s, those bass players followed guitar lines, or they followed some kind of line. It was melodic.
Yeah.
80s California rock music changed the game by having bass players just stay on a root note while the guitar passages went over it. Like Dokken and Loudness and Quiet Riot. We all had that same kind of formula pattern. If there was one guitar in the band, the guitar would play what the patterns were, and the bass just dun 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 dun.
Right.
Dun 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 dun. 8 quarter notes, 16th notes, 8th notes, whatever. It was so Blackie's saying, I'm trying to play these walking bass lines where I could find them. I'm trying to find the pocket between Tony on the drums and what they're doing on the rhythm guitar. I'm listening to that where my spot is. And Blackie's going, can you play simpler? There's only like 4 chords in the song. It's just play straight bass. That's what I first started hearing. Just play straight bass. Dun 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 dun. Dun, 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 follow the guitar. Da, 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 da. All right. So, but I got a chance to really squeak it in there in School Days. Originally, Randy sang School Days, but later on, Blackie took over and he sang School Days. So Randy was singing School Days, and we'd all come in on the chorus. But School Days reminded me kind of like had an Alice Cooper feel to it. Okay. And then, so in finding my bass groove in there, I'm starting to feel this jazzy, strutty, swaggering bass feel like this. And so I started subconsciously channeling Dennis Dunaway out of Muscle of Love, doing
Okay.
this bass run in there. Okay, and then when we get to the chorus, I switch, and now I'm playing the bass line to Love Gun. Or I'm sorry, the guitar solo. I'm playing the Alice Cooper feel in the chorus, but then in the solo, I'm playing what sounds like the bass line to Love Gun. So I was able to, instead of just going da 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 da, I've got this boom ba bum 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 ba bum bum ba 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 ba. This is ascending, descending melodic bass lines, which when we recorded the demo, you can still hear them on there.
Right.
On the original first W.A.S.P demo, which I recorded, you can hear this walking bass line, this jazzy, swinging, swaggery bass line, and but everything else I had to play pretty much straight, like he asked. By the time we recorded the demo, Blackie was really happy. I mean, he said, okay, he said, the audition took 2 days. It was the 6th, and then a day later was a break, and then on the 8th, we continued. We ran through the stuff a few more times, and he said, okay, talk to the band. You got the gig. You're the guy. Unbeknownst to me until years later, like just a few years ago, they originally Blackie was trying to get Don Costa to play bass.
Okay.
And Donnie didn't like Blackie. He hated Blackie. Nobody liked Blackie's reputation. And he was like, Blackie's like, come on, join the band. Come on. Johnny's like, no, I don't want to join the band. I don't want to play with you. Like that. And Donnie wound up replacing me after I was out.
Okay.
Donnie did 1 or 2 shows after I was out of the band. He had a cheese grater on the back of the bass. He'd flip the bass over and he'd run his knuckles over on the cheese grater and make him bleed. And he'd hold his hand out, and the girls in the audience would lick the blood off his. This is before AIDS, okay, or before all of that.
Yeah.
But it wasn't dangerous, I guess. Nobody thought it was dangerous to lick somebody's blood.
Sure.
Like that. But that's what Donnie did, and Blackie kicked him out because he upstaged Blackie. So and then Donnie got a gig with Ozzy Osbourne, one of the big festivals, and he upstaged Ozzy, and Ozzy punched him out, and he kicked him out of the band. But at least that's how I read this. The story was relayed to me. So Blackie felt so good that the demo really represented us. By this point, I co-wrote "Master of Disaster" with them, which was the 6th song we started to work on. And I contributed. I gave them the second verse of lyrics, and there was a drum accent that I worked out with Tony right before the solo. Some fans feel that because they asked whatever happened to that song. Somebody pointed out that "Wild Child" sounds a lot like "Master of Disaster" in the verses. So never wanted to get rid of a good idea. Blackie probably kept it and rewrote it.
Yeah.
Because he turned "Don't Know Who I Am" into another song. I forget what it was, but Mr. Cool. He turned Mr. Cool into some other song like that.
Right.
He would change the lyrics, change the song title, but it was essentially.
Yeah, I remember seeing that video on YouTube of Mr. Cool. I forget what it changed it to. What was your initial impression though of like Blackie and Randy and Tony? Like, did you like them initially, or think it was going to be a good fit, or?
It takes a while to understand the chemistry.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, now we'll connect this dot. Me being a New York wise guy, sarcastic, I tend to quote a lot of sound bites of comments of certain lines in movies.
Okay.
That are funny at the moment. They fit that. It was the premise of the old HBO series Dream On was that every time the main character was get into some situation, they would flash to a clipping of an old film that's a funny line that was related to what was going on in his life at the time. So I would spout out all these jokes and quick witticisms and things like that. Randy is from Texas. Now, I'm not going to say that the guy's slow, but you have 2 different regions. The people in Texas tend to be a little bit more,
laid back, a
little bit y'all drawl and, cowboy lifestyle and cowboy mentality. And, you were a city slicker. And here's me going, hey, Mr. Wise Guy, hey, watch this fucking story. Hey, and being a jokester, somewhere along the line, Randy felt an affront that I was having a fun at his expense. And he told Blackie he was going to quit the band or either fire me or he's going to quit. So in the middle of all of this, Blackie goes, "You better go talk to this guy because if he doesn't rejoin the band, you're out." I said, "What did I do?" He says, "You must have said something because he's pissed off at you." I said, "He didn't say anything to me. He came to you and said." So I knew Randy liked champagne. He liked cheap champagne. So I got a couple of $2 bottle champagne, a couple of bottles, and Jay drove me all the way down to the studio. And Randy and I took a couple of chairs and we sat all the way in the back against the wall, and we drank champagne and danced all night and about it out under fire. And by the end of the conversation, we were best friends.
Nice.
He finally understood where I was coming from, and that I was not making fun of him at his expense, and that this is just the way us New Yorkers are. I said, Blackie's funny in a different way with his comments. Right. I'm a little quicker with my comments like that, and so we everything was all hunky dory. We were peas and carrots, and we hit it. And I had Randy laughing by this point. I don't know how much of it was the champagne, but I had him laughing at this point. That all worked out. And now I didn't know that before that Randy and Blackie had already had their arguments and fights with each other. Randy to this day will say that, yeah, we had fights early on before Rik was in the band. Blackie's a control guy.
Yeah.
You got to have the Obviously. Last say. It's his band.
Sure.
It's supposed to be a band, but Blackie was always calling all the shots, like that, which bears out later on.
Sure.
So while this is happening, and I'm at Blackie's house in the days before cell phones, we had like what they call the princess phone, regular phone, and had push buttons like you'd see in an office building. And he had a really long extension. So I got a phone call from a friend in New York. I took the phone outside. I'm walking around the courtyard there, and Blackie's like this, watching the Yankees game on TV, slumped down in the chair. Now he'd already told me that he wants to change the name of the band. He doesn't want to use Sister anymore. There was White Sister, there's Twisted Sister. There's too many bands with Sister in it.
Yeah.
He says, I need something new. This is going to be completely new from the ground up. This is a new band. We need a new name, a new everything. And I don't know what to call us. So that conversation came and went. And here I am on the phone outside. And I'm kicking over leaves. There's a big avocado tree, and there's leaves all over the ground. And I'm kicking over leaves, and I kick this leaf, and there's what looks like a yellow jacket on the ground. And I like this with my foot. I stepped on the leaf, so I didn't flatten it completely, but I kicked the leaf over, and it was still moving. So it's kind of curled, and the stinger is moving around like this. And I went TV. Oh, remember the Green Hornet, the TV show? Ran against Batman?
Right.
It had this psychedelic optic pattern.
Right.
With the Hornet, and it would go, make that buzzing sound.
Yeah.
And that's what it looked like. So I go back in the house. I said, you remember what you were telling me about ideas for a new band name like that? Now, of course, Yellow Jacket doesn't look like a wasp. Wasp's black and paper wasp is slender, has a different shaped body. But the first thing that came to my mind was a wasp. So I go in the house and I say, I got an idea for the band name. So he's like this. He goes, what? I said, Wasp. I said, I just stepped on one outside and squashed it. But remember Green Hornet? Remember the stinger? And he's like, good idea. He goes, keep thinking like that.
Huh.
He goes back to watching the Yankees game like that. A couple of nights later, we're at rehearsal. And rehearsal's over. We get together, we're chatting by Randy's office. And Blackie goes, got a name for the band. Oh, really? And Randy goes, well, I wanted to call the band Hellion because that's what they call little bad kids in Texas.
Right.
And I said, I think there's already a band up in Hollywood called Hellion. And Tony, inimitable Tony, what name's a band after a bug? I said, the Beatles?
Yeah.
Scorpions?
How
You
about
know,
that?
that was my comeback. Randy laughed, and Blackie goes, "That's it. The name of the band is W.A.S.P." So I say at this point, you have four guys standing in the same place at the same time, would be, technically speaking, the co-founders of a new band, right? And it's called W.A.S.P. So we're all now the four new co-founders of W.A.S.P, including me, the guy who came up with the name.
Did Blackie give you the credit of coming up with the name?
Never, ever, ever.
Okay. Okay.
Now,
Interesting.
I again with my artwork,
Hmm.
I when I'm back to his house, I got my little flare pen out
Okay.
when I once the demo was done, the cassette,
Hmm.
and I took and then again, if I wasn't in the band and Blackie was just using me as a temporary fill in,
Hmm.
he would not go to the trouble of calling Don Atkins Jr. up and going, Don, I want you to come take some pictures of the band. Let's do a
Right.
photo session. Don had already shot Motley Crue many
Hmm.
times over. He shot a whole bunch of other bands in the Hollywood scene like that. And Don was a real up and coming, really great photographer
Right.
in Los Angeles. So we went to Don's parents' house in Orange County somewhere and puts up the blue tarp he used with Motley Crue. And we took a whole bunch of pictures and like that. I went to the print shop up on Sunset Boulevard. Blackie's house is walking distance to Sunset Boulevard. It was like
Okay.
Fountain and Highland around that area. And I Xeroxed them down so that they fit on a little cassette flap
Okay.
like that. And by hand, I know there's the picture, and I drew up like a fictitious W.A.S.P logo, and I wrote the names of the song. I try to envision a generic album cover
Hmm.
like that, and so I put our names, Blackie Lawless guitar, Randy Piper guitar, Rik Fox bass, Tony drums, and a list of the songs like that, and made my own little cassette flap. So it
Hmm.
looked like here's my little unofficial official demo tape with the songs on
Right.
it. That was around April. By the end of May, he stops talking to me. Just cold. No conversation whatsoever. No good morning, no what's up, whatever. It's just he would not talk to me more than necessary.
Hmm.
And eventually this went by for 2 days, and he finally goes, you know what? We got to talk. That's my introduction to that phrase, we got to talk. Never heard that before. So he sits down and it's like, look, it's not working out. Randy's not happy. Tony's not happy. And if they're not happy, I'm not happy. So what about the demo? The demo sounds great. He goes, there's just something between us that's not working out. It's not working out.
Huh.
So you're out of the band. And you are to surrender all your copies of the band photos. So I can't even prove that I was in this band. He didn't say anything about give me back the demo that I wrote.
Right.
But he says he was very specific, adamant about give back the photos. I said, why? He goes, because it's my band. They're my pictures. I paid for them. I had to give him back the pictures. He goes, now, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. You're going to have to find some place to go. You're cut loose. So fortunately, I had made some friends with various girls around the club scene.
Right.
And there was a girl who had an apartment on Clark Street, just up the corner from the Whiskey. And I told her what happened, and she said, "Well, you can come stay here until you get on your feet," like that. And she knew everybody in the scene as well. And when Blackie was left for a couple hours, I found the negatives. I went up to Sunset Boulevard and I printed another set of the pictures.
Nice.
And when I came back, I found out the negatives were gone. But this time, I stashed a couple of the pictures before I went in the house. Luckily, thankfully. And he's like, where's the negatives? Here's the thing. You made more pictures, didn't you? Give me the fucking pictures. And he went ballistic on me. I told you, you cannot have those pictures.
That's freaking crazy.
I said, I didn't sign anything saying like I was in Kiss. Now I can't say I was in Kiss.
Yeah.
There's no disclaimers or anything like that. No forms, liability forms. That's just the way it was. This was my introduction to it. Now get the fuck out. So luckily, like I said, I stashed some pictures aside, which became a thorn in his side ever since, because he didn't want me to have any credit that I was originally in the band and that I came up with the name.
Right.
And every interview subsequently after that, when they go, what does W.A.S.P stand for? We ain't sure, pal.
How about that's back when I was in high school, it was we are sexual perverts.
That was another one. Eventually, it wound up meaning we're all side players. They asked Randy that in an interview. He goes, "That's what it became." But there's an interview on YouTube where they're interviewing Randy and going, "So tell me, was Rik Fox really in the band?" He goes, "Well, yeah, he played with us for a while. Wasn't long, but he played with." I said, "They said, did he come up with the name W.A.S.P?" Bam. Randy's like, "Yes, he did. He came up with the name." He goes, "I don't know, it stung him in the hand or something. I don't remember what the story was." He goes, "But Rick definitely came up with it." He goes, "And Blackie stole it. He put the periods in it." So wow. I'm validated by an actual band member at the time. And to this day, there is still an army of W.A.S.P fans who refuse to believe it.
Have you ever talked to Blackie over the years, or
once? When I got the gig with Steeler.
Okay.
And Steeler was one of the hottest, largest cornerstone heavy metal bands in LA in 1983.
Mm-hmm.
The Rat, Crew, Steeler. Okay, Steeler worked their way up. They came in from Tennessee. They were nobodies. Self-contained, truck, lights, PA, the whole shebang. And they get on stage like they owned it. Okay. They were all very good players. Ron Keel was the only rock star in the band. The other guys, they were good players, but they weren't rock stars.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing against them. I met the guys since now at the Rockin' Pod. And Mike Dunnigan. Nobody can find Tim Morrison, the bass player. But I met Bobby Eva, the original drummer, and Mike Dunnigan, the guitar player. Really nice guys. I watched Ron have a heart-to-heart with them and apologize for what happened and how it went down and why he fired everybody and replaced it with me and Yngwie like that. Huh. Yeah, and you'll never see that on anywhere. But I got to watch that right in front of me. And and Ron's got a lot of integrity. He's probably the hardest working guy in the rock business.
Yeah, great guy.
Like that. Yeah. And so when I was in Steeler, one of the gigs we did, we supported Vandenberg.
Okay.
Right when Burning Heart was on the top of the charts.
Yeah.
At the Roxy. And it was a double bill show. We did an early show and we did a late show.
Okay.
We'd go on and then Vandenberg, and then we go on and then Vandenberg like that.
Okay.
So in between us and Vandenberg, I'm upstairs backstage at the Roxy, and in walks Nikki Sixx and Blackie Lawless together.
Okay.
Now those two were always cruising together.
Yeah.
Nikki and Blackie were like best friends, like that. And Nikki says he takes me in the bathroom. He shuts the door. Just me and him. And I had already met him. He knew me before I was in Steeler when I first came out from New York. And he says, "Look, I just want to congratulate you." He goes, I remember when you first got here, 6-7 months ago, or a few months ago, whatever, like that. And look where you are now. You're like one of the top bands in LA. He goes, you've joined the ranks of the bass gods in LA. He goes, you got Blackie, you got me, and the guys with black hair, the bad boy rockers.
Yeah.
Like that. And I want to congratulate you. I want to wish you well. And he opens up a little makeup compact and he takes out the razor blade. He starts chopping up lines. So here's me and Nikki go, in the bathroom like this. And there's Blackie outside going boom, 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 boom on the door. What's going on there? Come on, let me in, guys. What's going on there? Nikki goes, watch this. He goes, "Hey, fuck you, old man." He yells it through the door like that. And I said, "Why do you hang out with that guy?" I said, "He kicked me out of W.A.S.P." And he says, he goes, he likes to pick up my seconds, he likes to pick up on the girls that I don't do anything with like that. He goes, it's kind of, it's kind of a joke thing or something. I just let him hang out with me. Because by this point, Nikki was more famous than Blackie was.
Sure.
Like that with Motley Crue. It had already gone on to more fame at that point. So I thought that was it was humbling. It was a very strange moment, a bonding moment between Nikki and I, to do that. And we come walking out of the bathroom. Now to get to your question, Blackie's like, "What's going on in there?" And Nikki's like, "Nudge, nudge, wink, wink." You know what I mean? Like that. And so Blackie felt like, he missed out on something. He didn't do drugs. He drank. That guy could put down some vodka, but he didn't do drugs. And Nikki, okay, so it was a bonding thing between Nikki and I.
Right.
A moment. And then so Blackie, now seeing me in Steeler, he's like, okay, he's hedging his bets. I kicked this guy out of the band, and he's gone on to become he's worked his way up in the top band here.
Right.
So he says, "Hey, if there's anything I can ever do for you in the business, everything you ever need, give me a call. Maybe I can help you out with this, that, and the other." And I looked at him and I said, "Really?" I said, "Why be the motherfucker? Why don't you tell people that I was the guy in W.A.S.P? I came up with it. Why don't you be honest with people and admit that I was in the band?"
Right.
And he goes, "Well, that's not how the game is played." I said, "What game? The fuck are you talking about? Game."
The game that he plays.
And from that point on, when he turned around and walked away, that was it. 1983, April 1983. It's the last time he ever talked to me.
Did you ever go see them as they were starting to blow up in the clubs, or?
I saw them at the Troubadour with their first shows.
Was that when Chris was in the band at this point, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Chris and Randy, and he took over on bass.
Yeah. Were you surprised by that?
Yeah, and he had the sign that went on fire that said W.A.S.P.
Yeah.
And you're in the balcony of the Troubadour, you can feel it. You can feel the heat. Yeah. So you can imagine them standing right under it and how hot it was.
Were you surprised he was playing bass?
I guess. I don't know. I mean, they sounded even heavier now with two guitars.
Yeah.
And they come at the beginning of On Your Knees, they'd have that in the dark, they would play dun 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 and the lights would come on, and he's got Randy and Chris on leashes above chains.
Wow.
And the lights would come up, and he's got them on leashes like that, and they're shaking their heads like dogs and whatever. And he'd let one leash go, and there's guitar, there's Randy, and he let the other leash go, and there goes Chris like that, and he's doing like this, shaking it, doing the head spin with his hair and all of that. He was doing that when we were rehearsing, like that. He played guitar. He played a German iron cross shaped guitar. It was a Knight's Cross. Okay. That's what he was playing back then. And then after the show, there was an after party at one of the cheap hotels along Santa Monica Boulevard. And I sat down with Randy. We're sitting on a bed there. I got a picture of it. He had cut his hair short at this point. There was talk of him taking a day job at a McDonald's because he had cut his hair short. But he's sitting next to me. Blackie comes up. He's standing on a bed above us, doing something, having fun, doing something with some girl. And he started to laugh. And I took a picture of that. And you could see him going. And he looks over at me and he goes, "Don't ever show that picture to anyone, ever." Never let anyone see me smile like that. He doesn't want his human side to be known.
Yeah.
As Randy and Chris would say later on, the tour bus would pull up to the venue, and Steve Duren would get out and walk in and into the dressing room and become Blackie Lawless. And they'd come off stage at the end of the night, and Blackie Lawless would take himself off, and Steve Duren would come out and walk onto the bus. So he didn't want people it's like Prince, or certain people who have a stage persona that's an alter ego.
Yeah.
And he didn't want people to see that other side of him.
Yeah.
And he would subsequently shun a lot of fans in doing so.
Sure.
Like that. But so Randy sits next to me and he says, he remembered the phone call I had, because after I got kicked out, I called him up and I said, what the fuck happened? Why am I out of the band? He goes, "I don't know." He goes, "I didn't have anything to do with it." He goes, I said, "Blackie told me you and Tony didn't want me in the band anymore." He goes, "No, that's not true." He goes, "Blackie runs everything." I said, "Then why didn't you stick up for me?" He goes, "Because he'll fire me too."
Yeah.
I said to Randy, "Why don't you and I form a band and call it Hornet?" That's what he laughed. He goes, "No, I can't." He goes, I'm already invested with this.
Right.
And Randy's ex-wife, Belle Piper, who was alive at the time, she was another person right after Kevin DeBroda told me to watch my ass, watch my back. Now she was married to Randy and then separated. They broke up, they divorced, whatever. But she knew the circle and she knew Blackie, and she told me, watch out for him. Watch out for him.
Wow.
Don't trust this guy. There were nights when people I met from the scene, like this guy Donovan, he was a roadie for Motley Crue and a bunch of bands. He somehow got his hands on a limousine, a fully stocked limousine, picked me up. We go into town, to the Hollywood. He picks up Vince Neil, Tommy Lee, one of the bartenders from the Troubadour, and we're sitting in there and we're slugging in, we're partying with Vince Neil and Tommy Lee. Holy crap, like that. And I had a little too much Jack Daniels. Okay, and Tommy's sitting across from me, like you're facing me. Tommy's in the back facing the front. I'm in the other seat facing the back, like that, up against the door. And it starts to come up. I can feel it coming up.
Oh no!
I'm
oh no!
In the face. Tommy Lee goes, no, dude, no. And we pull into some place in Beverly Hills somewhere. I opened the door and I ran out into somebody's lawn, into the bushes, and I went, and I just hurled. And the bartender from the Troubadour, Kelly, she comes running over. You okay? And they help you get cleaned up here, because she's seen this. People get sick and drinking in the Troubadour. I went past my limit. I had a little too much, like that. And I was still, So they took me back to Blackie's house.
Oh no!
And they brought me. Blackie comes out. He goes, "What did you do to him? That guy's my investment. I had to kill you guys and beat the shit out of you. What do you?" And Tommy and Vince are like, "What? We didn't do anything. We didn't do anything." He drank. He got sick.
Oh, that's funny.
So, I mean, at that point, Blackie cared enough that I was in the band. I was his investment.
Yeah,
like that. I don't know where he scratched the money up to fly me out, but to LA. But so
now, when Blackie kicks you out of the band, do you think to yourself, like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to go back to New York. Screw this place.
That thought crossed my mind. Like I said, I called up the girl who said, you can come stay at our place. She had a huge 2-bedroom apartment in the same building. Her apartment shared the wall with Motley Crue.
Oh God. Okay.
So that was the apartment, the famous apartment. I had the door kicked in so often. There was no lock on the door.
Right.
And that's where I met Nicky, because I walked in, I knocked on the door for his power got shut off. The band had moved out at this point. Vince was living around the corner on Larrabee with his wife, his first wife.
Okay.
And Nicky didn't have the rent money or the power money for his utilities. So he was running a utility extension, one of those orange construction extension, out of the girl's apartment around the balcony and into Nicky's, into the balcony on his side, so he could have some power.
Oh, that's great.
To see this, So I knocks on the door because she asked me to go ask him something, and I knock on the door, and they had something against it because there was no lock. And I hear him inside going, "Yeah, come on in." So I pushed the door, and I had a chair against it. And he's got 2 red leather love seats. Let me find the camera. Pushed together. So it made like a little square pit couch.
Oh, boy.
So he got out from under the blankets, and he goes, "Come on in, dude. Come on in." And there's like shit everywhere. Papers and this, that, and the other. It looked like a college dorm.
Right.
And like that. And then I see that in the corner of my eye, I see the blanket move. So he's not alone.
Yeah.
And I see I hear a little bit of blonde hair sticking out from the blanket. And then I see the blanket come down like that. And I see a set of eyes. Just the eyes alone, I went, that looks familiar. And the blanket comes down, and it's Lita Ford.
I'll say Lita Ford, right?
Lita Ford. They were seeing each other. And I said, like, oops. She got her clothes on. She goes, "No, it's cool, dude. It's cool." Like that. She got dressed under the blanket and jumped up out of the thing, out of the pit. And I said to Nikki, Roxy next door asked me to ask you, blah, 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 whatever it was, like that. And then Lita goes, hey, let's go out for breakfast. Well, me and Nikki, we're broke.
Yeah.
I'm doing a couch tour in this girl's apartment next door. I don't have any money, pocket money. The girl that I was dating in Jersey took all of my bass gear back to Pastore's Music in Jersey City, and it was used stuff anyway, and sold it for whatever money she could get for it. Took half of it, paid my rent, my last month's rent to the landlord at the apartment, my Jersey apartment, and then sent me the balance, which I tried to live off of, and I was out of money.
Wow.
Like that. It wasn't much. So, and I had a day job set up for me. There was another day job that I had in Manhattan at a marketing research firm up on like Lexington and 3rd, somewhere around up in upper Midtown Manhattan. My dad worked there. Some of our neighbors from our buildings worked there. Friends worked there. It was a big, huge marketing research firm. So I got hired there, and the office manager liked me, and I said, well, I got an opportunity to go to California and try out for a band. She says, we have a satellite company in Century City of the same name.
Oh, wow.
Lieberman Research. She says, let me make a call, and this way you'll have a job waiting for you when you get there.
Wow.
Oh, cool. Wow. How cool is that? So she set it up, and then when I got to California, I called them up. They said, well, we have the same name. We're essentially run by the same people, but we're like cousins. We're not really run exactly the same way. He goes, we don't have any openings right now.
Wow.
He goes, you're going to have to wait until we get an opening, and then you can come in. You can't just push somebody aside and bring you in like that.
Yeah.
So what I had as a day job flopped. Otherwise, I would have started out with having a day. I'd have money in my pocket.
Sure.
And Blackie was broke. He was starving.
Yeah.
So this would have made up to my value, and because I'd be able to buy him something to eat.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I was starving so bad. This is the first time I'm ashamed to say that I had to shoplift food to survive because I was broke. I was stealing packages of cheese from the supermarket up the street.
Wow.
To get and avocados. We didn't eat avocados in New York. I opened one up and I said, "This thing's slimy. What the hell is this?" Mexican food was not big in New York, so
yeah,
guacamole.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, here's food sitting literally in my hand. I could have survived on.
Right.
Because, avocado is good for you. It has essential fatty acids that it's good for you. I didn't know that. I think these were like vegetable hand grenades. I throw them over the roofs. Like you do with a potato gun. You shoot it, where's it going to land? You're going to hear a window crash, like that. So anyway, so Lita says, all right, guys, I'll cover it. And there was a famous restaurant, just walking distance with an outside patio. And I sat there and Lita Ford bought me a Nikki Sixx breakfast.
Wow.
Like, how cool is that? I said to Lita, I said, you don't remember me, do you? She goes, you look familiar. I said, you were in the Runaways. She said, yeah. I said, you played CBGBs in the 70s. She goes, yeah. I said, I played there in 75. Me and the bass player from Harlow came to see you guys. You played at the CBGB. She goes, that's where you look familiar from.
Wow.
I said, I was talking to you and then the girls in the band after the show in front of the stage. So that dot connected. I played CBGBs 2 years before AC/DC did.
Wow.
They played there in 77. I played there in 75. I was part of the punk scene. So and people in California didn't know New York like up close and personal. They just knew what they read in magazines or heard through the grapevine. People from New York were tough and crazy. So people would kind of walk into the Troubadour and people would like back away when I'd walk in and back away from me at the bar, I had leather gloves with studs in them, leather jacket, black hair. And they're like, who's this? Where did this guy come from? Like you said, out of nowhere.
Right.
That's right. In their mind. That's essentially what I did. I just came out of nowhere, so, and that was it. So I was at a W.A.S.P and I was like, okay, stranger in a strange land. I didn't know anybody. What do I do? I don't have the money to go back to New York, like that.
Right.
And so I'm staying at this girl's apartment and I figured, well, network. The whiskey's right down the street. I'd go to the whiskey all the time, meet people, talk. I played with Blackie. I played, we do earlier. What kind of time did you have? That kind of thing. So I auditioned for the Greg Leon Invasion, one of the loudest guitar players. And he was an original member of Dokken. It was Greg Leon. I auditioned for Rat. We'd put on rock and roll barbecues, and that would invite bands that they'd come and cook some weenies and hamburgers for free, and they'll come and you get to meet people. So I got to audition for Rat. I still have the tape they gave me to learn the songs. None of that worked out. I rehearsed for 4 months with a band called Warlord. And Warlord was like they never really had a big following. It was the first I was introduced to them. It was the first time I really had to learn minor scale, dark music. It's like Dio, but darker.
Okay.
The guitar player looked like Richie Blackmore, played like him. Mark Zonder, fantastic drummer from San Diego. Bill Samis was the guitar player. They all had these character names for each other, like Thunderchild and Monster this and Angel that. And they referred to themselves in these character names, like we're talking now. Like we're not even on stage. We're not in character, which was kind of strange. But I'd never played this kind of music before. So it was a challenge that I had to rise to. There was nothing else for me going on. So I said, all right, they auditioned me. And, if they didn't like me, we could have said right then and there, good night, thanks. Have a good life. But apparently something about it worked. And so I was playing these minor scale songs, these arrangements, and for 4 months. And one day I says, hey, when are we going to start playing out? We're going to get a singer and play out?
Right.
And they looked at me like a deer in the headlights. What are you talking? What? Panic. What do you mean play live? I said, isn't that what all bands do? I said, I'm a performer. I play live.
Yeah.
They said, no. This is a recording project. We're not going to play live.
Oh.
I said, why didn't you tell me that 4 months ago?
Right.
And I said, sorry, guys, this ain't going to work. I live to play live.
Yeah.
And I packed up my bass. I said, thank you. Good night. And I left. They eventually got another bass player and a singer, and they recorded in an empty theater. And, it was just because so it would be like a live thing, but it was just them. Come to find out years later, Warlord was one of the bands that Yngwie Malmsteen actually liked. But he didn't know I was in Warlord, and it didn't dawn on me to tell him.
Right.
I was in Warlord. So,
so Rick, why don't we do this? Because why don't we do a second part interview?
We're running out of time.
Yeah, you know what? Because we're hitting now the 80s, and why don't we do a second part and start it with Steelers so we can really, because I don't want to. This is also fascinating to me, and I'm loving hearing these stories, and I don't want to miss nothing, and I don't want to skip over nothing.
It helps me to remember stuff because there's so much I forgot.
Wow.
And like I said, I didn't do as much as bands that have been out there, done several, 4, 5, 6, 7 albums or whatever.
Right.
But yet the little that I've done is still hard to encapsulate.
Yeah.
Because there's all these little side stories that connect dots to other things.
Right. That's what I mean. Yeah. So let's do that. Let's set up maybe for next week, part 2, and we'll kick it off from Steeler, and we'll go on. Right.
Sounds good.
Yeah, because I'm loving this. This is great.
I'm as I tell all the hosts for these shows I do, it's a privilege and an honor for me because you guys who were not around back then to see it up close or to live it, you came into it after the fact, and it's like, what did I miss?
Yeah.
And guys like us will come along and share our war stories, or whatever you want to call it, of what was going on in the 80s, what it was like back then, firsthand for us.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's an honor and a privilege for us to be able to you guys keep our names alive out there in the business, and the fans, the people around the world that missed all of this stuff, that missed the 80s. So we thank you for what you were able to let us bring to the table.
Yeah, especially we there's so much of the 80s for us to dive into. So yeah, we got to do a part 2.
and there'll never be an '80s again.
No,
You know, the
I feel
magic's
bad for
gone.
the youth today. That's
Yeah,
never going to experience what we did,
yeah.
especially
And
what
it's just,
you experienced.
there's so many of us out there that that have a story to tell.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Greg Chason, bass player, friend of mine
Mm-hmm.
from Badlands. That guy deserves a story.
Yeah.
He's got a new band together called Atomic Kings. They're
Mm-hmm.
amazing. They're a fucking kick-ass band. He
Yeah.
deserves a story. Who else? I'm friends. I'm on these Facebook bass player pages, Low Freaks, or the EGDB page like that, and we have so many other bass players that you know, and all of these guys deserve a story.
Yeah.
You know, because
Absolutely.
bass players get forgotten because we're in the back keeping the rhythm going. Drummers move, they get a story. Guitar players or lead singers, they get stories. But it's the other half of the rhythm section that kind of just gets, you know, pushed aside. So you know, we thank you for being able to get us out there and tell our stories too.
Absolutely. And you have a hell of a story, so we got to tell it right.
Thank you.
Absolutely. No, thank you, Rick. Seriously. So yeah, let's get it set up for next week, and we'll pick back up because I don't want to miss a thing.
All right, and again, it's nice that you know, my setup worked. Actually, we had our test flight yesterday.
Yes,
when you were behind the wheel. So, like, oops, wrong day.
I was like, all right, because I've done it before. I've screwed up things. I'm like, I think I really lost my mind. I said I could have swore,
So
and then
I had 2 interviews yesterday. One at 2, and then which was over in Sweden.
Okay.
And then you today, and I got them mixed up. So my wife writes the stuff on the calendar over where I write what's going on, and I'm like, which one? So and I'm one of those people that actually showed up and didn't stiff you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And actually, that person, well, he's a guitarist too, but he's mainly known as a bass player. I'll tell you off air who it was.
Yeah.
It wasn't Blackie Lawless either.
I would imagine, yeah. He won't take questions about me.
I can imagine. See, I'm probably better off not getting to interview somebody like him because I'd have to ask those questions. People want to hear it. Don't hide. Just tell the truth.
Yeah, well, if it did, it would undermine his story of W.A.S.P.
Yeah.
You know, he begins the story of W.A.S.P. with Chris Holmes.
Yeah.
You know, and then to the average fan, that's their recollection of that's when W.A.S.P. started, was with Chris Holmes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if it wasn't for things like YouTube, like people never would have really. I mean, I've been a huge fan of W.A.S.P. since 1983, the Chris Holmes era, and never would have known of Circus and all that until I saw the videos. I was like, wow, okay, now we see where the music of W.A.S.P. came from.
Yeah, yeah. And then and now we're all praying for Chris because he's starting his cancer treatments. So pray for Chris like that.
Absolutely.
I see your kitty on your back.
Yeah, he hops up here usually during the interviews and hangs out.
His name ain't Blackie, is it?
Nah, Sam.
Okay, he's very cute. I'm a cat man myself, so it's very cute.
Thank you. Cool. Well, Rick, thanks for doing this, and yeah, I'm gonna click this off, and then we'll set up for next week.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.